Chapter 2166. After the fourth fusion into a blue pearl, the Anubis construct was 16 times more powerful. Dongye Tianxi could still kill it in one move. After the fifth fusion into a purple pearl with 32 times more power, Dongye Tianxi could no longer kill it in one move. After the sixth fusion into a green pearl with 64 times more power, Dongye Tianxi was already having a hard time. West, what do you think the lowest color pearl is needed to pass the trial? Gaia asked. If it's you, what's the highest you can handle? West asked. Around the eighth fusion, Gaia said. 256 times. I'm not completely sure. If each team only needs one pearl, I think it'll take the 10th fusion, which is around 1024 times more powerful, West said. Is it really that high? If everyone has one pearl, I think 10 pearls from the 7th fusion should be enough. West was also unsure. After all, he didn't know the standard. He was only using half of Gaia's power. Gaia was the strongest in the association after Chun Zhao. It was reasonable to use half of her power as the standard. If it was the team's standard, then with her strength multiplied by 4 times, it should be possible to use it as the team's standard. The group discovered another group of Anubis constructs. They immediately chased after them. Just as they were blocking the Anubis constructs in an alley, a team appeared in front of them. The team had come from the other side of the alley. They stood on top of the wall and looked at the association members. Sorry, we found them first. The leader of the group was a young woman. West took 2 steps forward with a faint smile. Looks like we have the same opinion. Thank you. Please leave. We have to clear the area. We also think that we found them first, West said, smiling. Don't ask for trouble, the woman said with a snort. West didn't say anything. The people behind him had already expressed their attitude with their expressions and eyes. The other group had the same expression. Excited. Both sides seemed to be eager to fight. It seemed that they had been suppressed for a long time. Both sides were like this. They both wanted to find someone to fight. Suddenly, a woman dressed in white and wearing a veil appeared in front of West with 2 small katanas in her hands. She was about to slash at West. But at that moment, the woman in white's katana was frozen in place. Then, a demonic blade filled with demonic energy appeared in front of West, helping him deflect the odachi. Dongye Tianxi looked at the masked woman in white. You're from the Chiba family? Sword genius. How dare you use the demon blade? What an arrogant fool. Do you think that you have already taken control of the demon blade? One day, you will be devoured by the demon blade. The masked woman in white glared at Dongye Tianxi coldly. At the same time, there was a trace of wariness in her eyes. Dongye Tianxi grinned. I'm not controlling the demon blade. It has never truly submitted to me. The woman in white was puzzled. Dongye Tianxi did not seem to be affected by the demonic blade. His consciousness was still very clear, but from the demonic aura emanating from his body, it did not seem like he was unaffected. Could it be that the demon blade had no consciousness? The masked woman's eyes flashed, and she attacked Dongye Tianxi. Dongye Tianxi suddenly burst forward, his sword like a torrent. In an instant, the 2 odachi in the masked woman's hands shattered at the same time. Dongye Tianxi had no intention of showing mercy to the fairer sex. He raised the demon blade and slashed at her again. The white-clothed woman felt someone pulling her back. The demonic saber energy landed in front of the white-clothed woman, creating a 10-meter-long crack on the ground. The masked woman turned to look at her companion behind her. Thank you, Tylos. Watch out. Tylos cried out. At that moment, Dongye Tianxi rushed forward again. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Dongye Tianxi. Dongye Tianxi glanced at the figure. Since it was not one of his own, there was no need to waste time. He would just kill it. Dongye Tianxi's blade landed on the figure's body, but the blade did not cut in. The blade only cut open the figure's shirt, leaving a white mark on his skin. The man took 2 steps back and touched his chest. That was close. I almost got cut. The man sighed. Although Dongye Tianxi's attack did not seem to have any effect, it was not easy for the man to block it. The other members of the association stood at the back with their arms crossed, as if they were watching a show. 3 people had already made their moves, but they could not do anything to Dongye Tianxi. How strong are they? Gaia asked. Below average, West said. If the other side's strength is at that level, one or two of them are probably no weaker than Dongye Tianxi. Gaia's gaze fell on the leader of the group. That woman is very strong. At that moment, Dongye Tianxi had forced the three opponents into a corner. Dongye Tianxi was about to reach the masked woman in white. Finally, the leader of the group made her move. Suddenly, two black flames burst out from her palms, which she threw at Dongye Tianxi. Dongye Tianxi's attention was focused on the three opponents before him. He did not even notice the sneak attack from the woman. However, he did not need to pay attention, because he also had teammates. Before the two black flames could reach Dongye Tianxi, a red light intercepted them. Jalanash took a step forward, her palms ablaze with red flames. Do you only know how to sneak attack? The people on the other side all had expressions of righteous indignation. However, they had to admit that Dongye Tianxi alone was enough to suppress all three of them, forcing them into a dangerous situation. Dongye Tianxi was indeed ridiculously strong. No, to be more precise, the devil's blade in his hand. Fortunately, neither side had any intention of actually killing the other. Otherwise, a few people would have died in this battle. In fact, Dongye Tianxi had held back a lot after making his move. Otherwise, the opponents would not have come out unscathed. At the very least, no one had died. The leader of the group had a gloomy expression. She could also sense that this unfamiliar team was not weak. As a veteran who had participated in 2 battles of Holy Glory, although they had not achieved good results each time, she recognized the older teams. She had a rough idea of which teams were strong and which were weak. However, the team in front of her was clearly not weak, but it was as if they had crawled out of the ground. She had never heard of them before. Logically speaking, such a strong team shouldn't be weak. Moreover, it should not be the kind of team that suddenly rose to prominence. Without sufficient foundation, how could they cultivate such strength? Chapter 2167. The strength that Dongye Tianxi had displayed didn't need to be mentioned. If they were to really go all out, Dongye Tianxi alone would be able to hold off half of them. Of course, it was also possible that Dongye Tianxi was the strongest of the group. This was very possible. As for Jalanash, she also put a lot of pressure on them. The woman on the other side evaluated Jalanash's strength. Elemental magic. This was obvious. But from the strength that she had displayed just now, she was no weaker than herself. As for the others, they might not be as strong as the 2 who had attacked, but they might not be much weaker. So if they continued to fight, they probably wouldn't gain anything. But as time passed, more and more teams came in, and the number of Anubis constructs they could find decreased. So they weren't very willing to give up on this large wave of Anubis constructs. Should he give it a try? Perhaps the Japanese warrior with the demon blade and the elemental girl were the only ones in this group. They don't look like they want to leave. Are they that blind? Wes was a little unhappy. They're probably newbies too. The people from the Union thought that the other team was a newbie like them. Little did they know that the girl in front of them, who looked like she was in her early 20s, was actually a veteran who had participated in 2 holy battles. We still don't know how much time we have left, West said. Let's finish this quickly. Just then Mord made his move. Countless vines suddenly drilled out from the ground. 3 of the 10 people on the other side were entangled by the vines. As soon as the vines wrapped around the 3, they immediately screamed. The vines were as hot as soldering iron. These were lava vines. As their name suggested, they were extremely hot. Gaia also made her move. The moment the sword on her back was pulled out, it ignited with high-temperature flames. Her target was the largest spiritualist on the other side. The spiritualist had just made his move when Gaia sniped him. Seeing Gaia's flaming sword coming at him, the spiritualist roared and his body expanded several times, turning into a 4-meter-tall giant. But facing Gaia's flaming sword, the giant was instantly smashed to the ground. With a cry, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The pupils of the leading woman on the other side shrank. So powerful. Every spiritualist from the opposing team was excessively strong. Just as she was in shock, her team's enhanced-type spiritualist brushed past her. However, he did not fly over. Instead, he was smashed by Gaia. Stop. Everyone stop. The female leader of the opposing team could no longer accept the continuous losses. If they continued to fight, their team would most likely be eliminated at the start of the competition. Although the last 2 times she had participated, their team's results were not considered good. But he had never been eliminated in the beginning. If she was eliminated because of this conflict, she would lose all her face. There was a clear gap in strength between the 2 sides. She didn't think there was any reason to continue. Continuing to fight would only increase the number of casualties. Moreover, she felt that although the opposing team looked unfamiliar, they were not the same. However, it was definitely not the kind of newbie team that had just arrived. The team in front of him was most likely the second team of some powerful organization. The people from the association did not intend to kill them all. Otherwise, this group of people would either be dead or crippled. Of course, this was not because everyone in the association was kind. It was just that they didn't want to be too obvious. Killing people at the start of the competition was too arrogant. Moreover, they did not know if there was a rule against killing people. Thus, as newbies, it was better to keep a low profile. We don't want these Anubis constructs anymore, the leading woman said. However, West shook his head. Leave behind the demon pearls you've collected. Otherwise, none of you will leave. The opposing team was all furious. Although the leading woman was also furious, the situation was not in her favor. In the end, she accepted West's request. She threw a 5 fusion demon pearl and a 4 fusion demon pearl to West and hurriedly left with her team. Looks like they had a good harvest. They actually have more prey than us. They probably arrived earlier than us, Gaia said. I estimate that there should be plenty of time. Some teams probably haven't arrived yet. If the trial is too short, it will be very disadvantageous for later teams. There are benefits to having a long time, but there are also disadvantages, Gaia said. Gaia said, these Anubis constructs are no threat to us. But just like before, there will be friction between the teams. Furthermore, we will need supplies. I believe that the organizers will throw in some supplies. When that happens, another battle will be inevitable. Another beautiful night. Chen Zhao lay on the deck chair on the balcony, enjoying the bright moonlight. Do you like the moonlight? A sudden voice rang in Chen Zhao's ears. Wow! Chen Zhao jumped up. Bifla, are you crazy? No. Do you know that it's very impolite to barge into someone else's room? I know. Then why did you do it? Why should I consider a mortal's feelings? Do you think I won't kill you? Chen Zhao gritted his teeth at Bifla. I wanted to give you some clues, but since you don't want them, forget it. Bifla turned to leave. Chen Zhao hurriedly pulled Bifla back. Wait, I was just joking. I forgive you, Bifla said matter-of-factly. The sinful blood of the night fills the forgotten cave. What do you mean? Figure it out yourself. Speak clearly. What do you mean figure it out myself? Figure it out my ass. Chen Zhao cursed. What was that? The sinful blood of the night fills the forgotten cave. He couldn't understand at all. It means exactly what it says. Has the intelligence of a mortal devolved to that of a gorilla? Right now, Chen Zhao really wanted to punch Bifla's cold face. It would definitely be fun. The sinful blood of the night? The criminals that appear at night? Filling the forgotten cave. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin deep in thought. The forgotten cave should be an abandoned place in the spiritual world, or some organization, right? Which idiot came up with this code? Such a stupid code. Why do I feel like I'm being fooled when I solve the puzzle? Celestial Master Zhang, Bifla said. It really is an idiot's question. A lot of people have gotten this clue. You'd better act quickly. Chapter 2168. Are there criminals in Istanbul? Or are there enough criminals? Chen Zhao wasn't too interested in killing people with a purpose. Chen Zhao had killed people too, and many at that. It felt like someone gave you a mission to kill people. They would only give you a pass after you killed a certain number of people. Chen Zhao didn't like this feeling. At least, he didn't think that the reward was proportional to the effort. Every time there's an event like this, the organizer will attract some criminals or criminal groups to the host city and treat them as the spiritualists' prey. It's not just the Battle of Holy Glory or Istanbul. In fact, These criminals and criminal groups are the appetizers for many events in the spiritual world. Treating humans as prey. What a bad taste. Have you done something like this before? Baifla looked at Chen Zhao meaningfully. Now that you mention it, I really want to do it too. Chen Zhao suddenly realized that he was in no position to say this. Because he himself often treated others as prey. The process might be different, but the method was the same. To you and me, ordinary people are no different from ants. The only thing that binds us is the morals we grew up with. Right now we're facing criminals with no morals at all. The only thing that binds us also disappears. In our worldview, the idea that criminals all deserve to die gives us an inexplicable pleasure when we hunt them. This is the so-called hero complex. Chen Zhao really wanted to retort, but he realized that he couldn't. Also, don't you think that we're doing justice now? Okay, you've convinced me. People like Chen Zhao and Baifla didn't need to overcome any psychological burden. They didn't have any psychological burden about killing people. They were telling themselves that they were right, and those people deserved to die. Chen Zhao and Baifla circled the streets and locked onto a criminal group. From some obvious features, they could tell that they weren't locals. Why are they here? Chen Zhao asked curiously. Maybe it's some business, or it's fake news. Anyway, it's easy for the organizer to attract these criminals here. Chen Zhao and Baifla tailed the group of criminals to their place of residence. It was an abandoned street. It was very remote and suitable for them to act. However, it was still early, so the two of them waited patiently. There are at least 100 criminals here. Shall we split them evenly? Let's do it based on our own abilities. Whoever hunts the most is the one with the most ability. There's no point in splitting it evenly, Baifla said disapprovingly. Are you sure you can beat me? Chen Zhao asked. It wasn't that Chen Zhao looked down on Baifla. He just felt that he was stronger than Baifla. Baifla smiled. Why do you think I can't compete with you? All right, let's see who's capable. Chen Zhao shrugged. At the same time, he was determined to teach Baifla a good lesson. Baifla glanced at Chen Zhao. He could feel Chen Zhao's competitiveness. However, how could he remain calm? He secretly made up his mind to fight Chen Zhao to see who was stronger. At this moment, 3 figures descended from the sky. They were 3 spiritualists, an old man, a middle-aged woman and a young man. The 3 spiritualists landed on the roof opposite Chen Zhao and Baifla. We targeted the criminals here first. Please leave. The old man had a benevolent smile. The middle-aged woman and the young man were both arrogant. They looked like they deserved a beating. When they looked at Chen Zhao, their eyes were filled with anticipation. Chen Zhao grinned. Once again, Baifla was ignored. The founder of the Roy Prophet religion. Baifla looked at the old man. He has a very special magic called Battle Prophet. No matter what kind of enemy he faces, he can predict what they are going to do and how they are going to attack. Chen Zhao had to admit that Baifla's presence was really too low. The 3 didn't notice Baifla at all. Even if Baifla told them where they came from in front of them, the 3 seemed to be blind. They didn't notice Baifla at all. Battle Prophet? I wonder if they can predict that I'll beat them into pig heads. Chen Zhao clenched his fists and looked at the 3 maliciously. However, Chen Zhao was still curious about the Battle Prophet's fighting style. Could it be that he could see the future? If they could see the future, why would they continue to stay here? Would Chen Zhao lose to them in the future? Chen Zhao looked at the 3 people in front of him with interest. He took a step forward. The old man's expression turned serious. He looked at Chen Zhao warily. This was because the magic he used was dozens of times more than usual. Chen Zhao suddenly moved and punched at the old man. But the punch missed. The moment Chen Zhao attacked, the old man took a few steps back. He wasn't fast, but he was 1 step faster than Chen Zhao. The moment Chen Zhao missed, the old man's palm was already pressed against Chen Zhao's forehead. Boom! Chen Zhao was sent flying. He hadn't been in such a sorry state in a long time. He landed heavily on the ground. His clothes were burnt too. At this moment, the criminal group hiding there heard the explosion and all rushed out. They saw Chen Zhao standing on the ground, his body smoking. They also saw the 3 people on the roof. Baifla was ignored again. All the guns were pointed at Chen Zhao and the 3 on the roof. But no one paid attention to the criminals. Who are you? Hands up. Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan on cooperating with the criminals. He stared at the old man on the roof. The middle-aged woman and the young man were both excited and proud. It was like they'd defeated Chen Zhao. The old man frowned because he hadn't held back just now. But Chen Zhao didn't seem to be hurt at all. The leader of the criminal group was suspicious. He and his subordinates clearly didn't know what was going on. Are these people the police? They didn't look like Interpol. Or were they in the same line? Boss, what should we do? Should we kill them all? I don't know. Wait. The leader yelled. Did you hear that? Hands up. Or else I won't go easy on you. However, his threat was ignored by everyone present. The leader was a bit angry. He grabbed his subordinate's gun, pointed it at Chen Zhao and fired. Bang! Ding! Chen Zhao's head tilted slightly, and a deformed bullet landed on the ground. Chen Zhao slowly turned his head to look at the leader. Do you want to die faster? Chen Zhao asked emotionlessly. Chapter 2169. The criminals were like cats with their hair standing on end. Their bodies were tense and arched. They all saw it. The guy had been shot in the head, but he didn't die. No, he was fine. Chen Zhao looked at the old man on the roof. The old man instantly tensed up. In front of him, there were countless threads surging towards him like a huge river. It was 10 times more turbulent than the first time Chen Zhao had attacked. He was the only one who could see those threads. Most of them were red, and they were made up of messy threads. Only a small portion of the threads were green. There was also a small portion that was made up of black silk. The red thread represented danger, while the green thread represented safety. Black meant death. If one touched a black thread, their life would be in danger. The old man had never faced an enemy like this before. He used his magic with all his might to grab the green threads. However, the red threads continued to attack the old man in a frenzy. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood. Suddenly, all the red and black threads turned green. Chen Zhao also stopped. That's weird. Did the old man go berserk? I didn't even touch him. How did he get hurt? The old man was depressed. He didn't expect the danger to be resolved by spitting blood. He's using a huge amount of magic. Bifla egged him on. That's why he spat blood. You better stop looking down on him. Really? Then I'll be more serious too. The old man's scalp was about to explode because countless threads had appeared before him again. If the silk thread looked like a big river last time, then the silk thread this time looked like a torrent. Most of them were red. About 1/5 were black. In this torrent, there were only a few extremely rare strands of green silk. The old man really regretted it this time. He'd thought that he should be at the top. He felt that even if he faced Celestial Master Zhang, the so-called top person in the world, he could still put up a fight. In the past, he'd faced countless strong people. Many of them were shockingly powerful. But even the shockingly powerful ones, when he used the prophet spell, most of the people he faced were green threads. So he could always easily resolve his opponent's attacks. But this man was like a demon king. He couldn't see any hope of winning. In this torrent, black and red mixed together, painting a terrifying scene. At the same time, it made it even harder for him to resist. The green thread also became unstable, as if it would snap at any time. The old man wanted to grab the green thread, but in the blink of an eye, it was washed away by the red and black torrents. He had missed a golden opportunity, but the old man had fallen into an illusion given by the future. The next moment, the old man felt pain on his cheek. Chen Zhao's fist landed on his face. The middle-aged woman and the young man, who had been smug just a moment ago, all revealed looks of disbelief. They even forgot to help the old man up. Chen Zhao looked at his fist. So weak, so disappointing. The old man covered his face, and his magic almost collapsed. Although his prophetic magic was very powerful, it could even be said to be a bug-level magic. But at the same time, there were huge risks. If he was facing an opponent so strong that he couldn't surpass him, in that case, he would also be affected by the magic of the prophet. Coupled with Chen Zhao's punch, he was seriously injured. Help me up. Let's go. The old man covered his face. At the moment, he didn't even have the strength to stand up. The middle-aged woman and the young man hurriedly helped the old man up and left the scene in a hurry. When the criminals saw the three on the roof, they disappeared with a whoosh. Chen Zhao immediately felt that something was wrong. These people didn't seem to be normal people. Chen Zhao turned to Bifla. Bifla, it's about time, right? Yes, let's start now. Suddenly, countless pools of dark magma appeared under Chen Zhao's feet. The dark magma instantly spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the entire street was covered in dark magma. You lost. A victorious smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. But just then, the criminals fell down one after another. No, you lost. Bifla's lips curled up. Chen Zhao's pupils constricted. He had no idea how Bifla did it. There were no energy waves. The criminals didn't seem to have been attacked either. Like dominoes, they fell one after another. Chen Zhao also moved. The dark magma on the ground turned into a mountain of knives. In an instant, dozens of criminals were minced at the same time. The fight came to an end. The two top spiritualists in the spiritual world didn't even give the criminals a chance to fight back. It started instantly and ended instantly. You didn't win, Chen Zhao said indifferently. It's obvious that I have more prey. No, your so-called prey has already been killed by me, Bifla said, shaking his head. You can't prove that you've killed them. Chen Zhao shrugged. Plus, how can you say that? No one was willing to admit defeat in this fight. After all, there wasn't a clear winner. Of course, they all thought that they'd won. Bifla stretched out his hand. Black blood rose from the corpses he'd killed and gathered in his palm. Chen Zhao's dark magma started collecting blood too. He realized that the criminals' blood was black. Why is their blood black? It's a mark. The mark that the organizers put on the prey, Bifla said. Oh, what spell was that? I didn't feel you attack at all. How did you kill them? If you admit defeat, I'll tell you. As a mortal, you should feel honored that I gave you this chance. Chen Zhao's face twitched. Fuck off. Chen Zhao didn't want to admit defeat, but he still recalled every detail of the scene. How did Bifla kill so many criminals? It was too strange. They clearly didn't do anything, but the criminals fell like wheat. It was as if they'd been killed by Bifla's gaze. Do you really want to know? Bifla asked. Yes. Then I won't tell you. You're really annoying. Do you know that? People who hate me are jealous of my status, power, and charisma. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Let's go and find the forgotten cave. There's no need. I know where it is. Where? Chen Zhao regretted asking the question. With Bifla's personality, he would definitely argue with him. Chapter 2170. Bifla stared at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao felt creeped out by Bifla's stare. It was very uncomfortable. Problem? Whatever, no problem. Just say it. What's with that look? Nothing. Let's go, Bifla said coolly. I'll take you to the cave. Chen Zhao followed behind Bifla, mumbling to himself. Why am I with this guy? Bifla was definitely not a suitable partner. He was eccentric and did strange things. He always had an unapproachable aura. Chen Zhao already felt uncomfortable standing next to him, let alone interacting with him. You're talking bad about me now. Bifla suddenly stopped and turned to look at Chen Zhao. No, you're wrong. Don't deny the truth. I can feel it. If you weren't so annoying, I wouldn't say bad things about you. It's really hard to communicate with you mortals. Did you old Zhang and old John say the same? No, they're all God's messengers and stronger than me. My strength should be above yours, right? You should at least show me some respect, right? Mortals will turn to dust after 100 years. No matter how strong you are, you can't withstand the destruction of time. You're still a mortal. What about you? How long can you live? I've already changed 4 bodies. More accurately, I've stolen them, Bifla said. If there's no accident, I have eternal time. What if there's an accident? If there's an accident, they'll be like the previous generation, my teacher. My consciousness will wear them down, and they'll become a part of my power. So, your teacher wanted to take over your body, but you devoured him, and you became the leader of the sect of fire? That's what I mean. Am I that familiar with you? How can you tell me something like that? It's not a secret. At least 5 people know about it. Chen Zhao shuddered and looked at Bifla warily. You're not thinking of taking over my body, are you? We are not the same kind of people. Your physical body is useless to me. More importantly, your consciousness is too strong for me to occupy. I won't be happy to hear that. Unknowingly, the two of them had already arrived at a stretch of ruins standing on the shore. In the middle of the ruins was a church. According to your 4 lives, you should be more than 200 years old now, right? Actually, 420 years old. Bifla said, "It's not easy to nurture a body that can accommodate me. I always feel that it's very evil. This is indeed a forbidden technique. But do you think this kind of forbidden technique can be used at will? Isn't it? First of all, the original owner of the physical body that I've taken over knows the truth. They're all my students, just like me and my teacher in the past. After this forbidden technique is activated, his and my consciousness will enter an arena in the sea of consciousness. In this arena, he and I will be on equal footing. It's a fair and just battle. According to what you said, you can obtain everything that a loser has. In other words, every time you reincarnate, your power and knowledge will almost double. How can you always nurture new losers? If I were to fight with the original owner of this body, and the original owner's magic power and consciousness were much weaker than mine, then I would have to give up the excess power. This is the arena set by God. No one can cheat. Everyone is on the same starting line. At the very least, the power level and consciousness power are the same. In other words, you've won 4 times in a life and death battle between people of the same level. 5. You forgot to count the time when I fought with my teacher's consciousness. It's quite risky in your line of work. Isn't it better to live the rest of your life peacefully? I've considered this problem, but sometimes when you're in that position, you can't live the rest of your life peacefully. That makes sense. In China, there's a saying that goes, when you're in the pugilistic world, you can't help yourself. Haven't you considered changing the inheritance method? For example, bloodline inheritance, ability inheritance, or an election system or something. Tradition is tradition. It can't be changed. Not long after, the two of them stood in front of the church, which only had broken walls left. These ruins should have been the site of an extremely tragic fire. Before they stepped into the church, a group of evil spirits came out. At the same time, evil spirits kept coming out of the surrounding ruins. Many of them had turned into fire demons. They were evil spirits that were killed by fire. They were fiercer and more dangerous than normal evil spirits. The living, get out of here, or you'll face the endless fire of disaster. Looks like they don't really welcome us. They just don't welcome you, Bifla said calmly. You're on their banishment list too. They can't even feel my existence. How can they banish me? They can't feel your existence? Why? A person can see the length of a pond, but not the width of an ocean. In their perception, I'm that ocean. You're the most shameless person I've ever seen. While Chun Zhao and Bifla were still attacking each other, the evil spirits were already rubbing their palms. These evil spirits were fatal to normal people. Even regular spiritualists would run if they encountered them. Basically, they'd run if they ran into them. However, they were facing Chun Zhao and Bifla now. These two were not ordinary people, nor were they ordinary spiritualists. They weren't good people either. Of course, these evil spirits couldn't tell who Chun Zhao was. A ball of fire smashed into Chun Zhao's back. Chun Zhao turned his head. It was a fire demon bearing its fangs and claws. In the next instant, the dark lava pounced over and engulfed the scorching fire fiend. The demon of scorching fire was still struggling in the dark magma, but it would only take a few seconds for it to finish. Very quickly, it disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened. You better run fast because I'll kill all of you. Chun Zhao smiled cruelly. Although Chun Zhao had already shown his hand, they weren't really afraid. It seemed that this wasn't their first time facing a spiritualist. They had a lot of experience fighting against spiritualists. There were also some weaker evil spirits that had already gone into hiding. Those that remained were basically all-powerful and ferocious scorching fire fiends. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2171. There was no suspense in the result. The fire demons really had no chance of winning against Chun Zhao. The difference between them was too huge. With a few punches and kicks, Chun Zhao killed all the fire demons. Not a single one was left. Chun Zhao didn't bother with the ones that had run away earlier. Chun Zhao and Bifla entered the abandoned church. There was a stone pot under the cross. This stone pot was originally used to hold holy water. Some newborns who joined the church used the holy water in the stone pot to be baptized. Bifla put the blood of evil he'd collected into the stone pot. The stone pot immediately boiled. At the same time, wisps of black gas rose. Bound by magic, the black gas formed a ring-shaped tunnel. This is the tunnel. Actually, the blood of evil in your hands is enough, right? Is the one in my hand useless? This tunnel is temporary. It can only last for 10 minutes. If you want to go in again, you'll have to open it again. Do we have to kill those criminals every time we go in? Chen Zhao wasn't against it. He just found it troublesome, very troublesome. Indeed. Bifla agreed with Chen Zhao's opinion. Can we go in now? Yes, but you have to follow the rules. You can't affect the progress of the event. I'm someone who values rules the most. At the moment, in the desolate market, the competition among the teams intensified. Most of the teams were already gathered here. Everyone was starting to familiarize themselves with the rules here. There were also the hidden rules of the organizer. However, the number of Anubis constructs here was not infinite. Therefore, competition was unavoidable. In a skyscraper, the people who'd been chased away by the association were now hiding in the skyscraper. The skyscraper was tall, but there were no Anubis structures. Therefore, no other teams would come here. Everything here was a mirror image of reality. Therefore, it was possible to destroy anything here without affecting the real world. However, the mirror image couldn't mirror creatures and energy. So, although the skyscraper was the same as reality, it didn't have power. Therefore, the electrical equipment in the building couldn't be used. No one wanted to climb dozens of floors. It was pointless. Fraser Abitak's expression was serious. Almost half of her subordinates were injured. 3 of them had completely lost the ability to fight. Although that group of people did not have any killing intent, they did not have the slightest scruples when they attacked. The damage it brought to their team was also very great. The other 2 were injured, and their strength had dropped by at least 30%. If they couldn't think of something, then their team would most likely be eliminated. Fraser Umbitak had his own organization. She had inherited the organization from her father. Although this organization was not very famous, it had a certain history. They couldn't compare to those top organizations or sections. However, he still had some fame. Although they didn't have many people, they had a certain foundation. Therefore, every generation would always be able to nurture a few spiritualists with extraordinary strength. For example, Fraser Umbitak had participated in the first battle of the Holy Glory since she was 3 years old. The second time was when he was 13. This was her 3rd time participating in the Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones, at the age of 23. It's not like there aren't other participants who are more experienced than her. But most of them were old people. As a participant for 3 consecutive years, Fraser Umbitak had seen many powerful people. But she did not expect to encounter such trouble in the 3rd year. This was the first time she personally led a team. If she did not even pass the entry trial this time, she would lose a lot of face. Her brothers and sisters would also wait for the opportunity to move and shake her position as first in line. Fraser Umbitak definitely did not want that to happen. We can't rashly clash with other teams now, Fraser Umbitak said solemnly. Mista, stay here and take care of the 3 injured people. The rest of you, spread out and lure the Anubis structure to this building. Then, use the terrain here to destroy it. Fraser said solemnly. Missy, will it be too dangerous for everyone to go out alone? Right now, we don't have the advantage in numbers. Additionally, our spoils of war have been snatched away by the other team. If we continue to stick to our original plan, it will be difficult for us to find enough prey. Right now, we can only take the risk and split up to search for more Anubis constructs. Although Fraser Umbitak was anxious, she did not completely lose her sense of propriety. Furthermore, the organizers have stipulated that they are not allowed to kill other contestants. So even if they encounter other spiritualists, their lives will not be in danger. Furthermore, the other teams will not casually attack people who move alone. If we can find the Anubis constructs, those ordinary Anubis constructs will not be strong. As long as they do not get surrounded, they will not be able to harm our people. What if the Anubis construct that we've attracted is discovered by the other guilds? Then we give up. No matter what, we have to ensure that our people do not get injured again. Don't clash with other teams. At least not before this trial ends. Fraser Imbritak paused and then continued. Also, we need to set a time to ensure that no one returns. If someone doesn't, it will increase the risk. Fraser Imbritak looked at the time. Let's match the time. It's 8:50 at night. We have to return here before dawn. Everyone knew that if they did not go all out now, they would really have to leave Istanbul with their tails between their legs. So, even though they knew that Fraser Imbritak's plan had a certain degree of risk, they still accepted the plan. Fraser Imbritak also chose a direction and left alone. In the empty city, there would occasionally be some shadows. Fraser Imbritak was very careful with her every move. After all, she was acting alone. Any accident would increase the risk for her and her team, so she had to be very careful. Just then, she noticed a battle in front of her. And from the fluctuations of the battle, it was very intense. Fraser Imbritak was about to turn and leave. The building next to them suddenly collapsed, and a giant Anubis construct knocked an enhancing-type spiritualist out of the building. The enhancer pounced directly in front of Fraser Imbritak. Fraser Imbritak gasped as she looked at the giant Anubis structure in front of her. So big. Chapter 2172. The Anubis construct in front of her was bigger than all the Anubis constructs she had ever seen. It was even bigger than all the Anubis constructs she had ever built combined. Clearly, this was an Anubis construct that had been born after many fusion of demon orbs. The number of fusion times was enough to make one despair. The chilling aura it exuded, as well as its distorted body, were proof of how terrifying the construct of Anubis was. The Anubis construct could not be fused infinitely. It was obvious that there was a limit to this fusion. In theory, as long as there were enough Anubis constructs, it could be fused infinitely. But in reality, with every fusion, the Anubis construct's body would be distorted to a certain extent. This was caused by the instability of the genetic chain. Why was it so difficult for natural creatures to evolve? It was because of the stability of the genetic chain. Only in extreme environments could there be a break in the genetic chain. And this mutation required a very long time. It was not a mutation process that was completed in a certain generation. After all, evolution and mutation were two different concepts. The Anubis construct was not a natural creature. Its genetic chain was very weak because of this. To put it bluntly, it was like a pile of building blocks. It could be piled high in a short period of time. In reality, this kind of building block was very weak and would collapse at the slightest touch. The Anubis construct pressed down on the spiritualist with one claw and turned its head towards Fraser Imbritak. Fraser Imbritak hurriedly retreated. Danger! Fraser Imbritak's nerves tightened. There had been deaths in every battle of Holy Glory, and the organizers of every battle of Holy Glory had stated that there was a certain level of danger. Although the organizers also ensured the safety of every participant. But such things could not be avoided. Fraser Imbritak did not want to be one of the few who died. Fraser Imbritak looked at the spiritualist who was pressed to the ground. It looked like he was dead, and she did not think she had the ability to save this spiritualist who was on the verge of death. From the corner of his eyes, he glanced at the ruins created by the gigantic Anubis construct, and noticed a few more spiritualists. But they were all lying on the ground. Fraser Imbritak saw some broken limbs. Damn it! Don't fuse a monster like this if you don't have the ability. Fraser Imbritak cursed silently. This giant Anubis construct had probably fused 10 times, or even more. Forget the fact that she was alone. Even if her entire guild was here, or even if their guild was in perfect condition, they would still not be able to fight against an Anubis construct of this level. There was no way 10 level 10 players could defeat a level 100 player. This was the difference in levels. It wasn't something that could be made up with numbers. The gigantic Anubis construct clawed down with its front limbs, and the enhanced type spiritualist on the ground howled in pain. This was also the last sound he made before he completely lost his life. The gigantic Anubis construct opened its mouth and shot out a black bolt of lightning. Fraser's head was about to explode. He rolled on the ground and narrowly avoided the black lightning. The black lightning shot straight down the road. It flew for thousands of meters and hit a building, piercing through it. Fraser's face was filled with shock. How could humans fight against such a monster? It was impossible. Humans could not defeat such a monster. Even if this guild was destroyed by the gigantic Anubis construct, they should know very well that they could not defeat this guy. Even if they were weakened by half, they could not win. No, even a quarter of the gigantic Anubis construct's strength could not be defeated. How could they fuse something like this? Unless they all had brain damage. It was impossible no matter how he thought about it. Therefore, the biggest possibility was that this gigantic Anubis construct wasn't fused by this guild. Fraser thought of a possibility. Someone, or a certain guild, had fused this gigantic Anubis construct on purpose. The goal was to eliminate their competitors. Fraser's nerves tightened even more. She could only think of one guild that could do this. Crows. They dared to provoke the organizers, and always acted against the rules. Other than crows, no other guild would do something like this. Whether in the east or the west, crows symbolized disaster. The crows that Fraser Umbitak thought of were a bunch of unlucky stars. An organization that trampled on the rules for fun. Coincidentally, a crow was hovering above Fraser Umbitak's head. The crow did not hide its tracks. Fraser Umbitak had already seen the crow. She was even more certain of her guess. Caw caw, the crow let out an ear-piercing caw, as if mocking Fraser. It also seemed to be announcing its existence. Fraser was out of her wits. She did not know what she should do. The only thing she could think of was to run. Running seemed to be the most reliable method now. And she could not run towards the gathering point. If she lured the monster there, it was very likely that the guild would be wiped out. So Fraser Umbitak decided to run in another direction. The crow was still circling above Fraser Umbitak's head. Caw caw. Noises kept echoing in Fraser's ears. It was even more annoying than the giant Anubis construct chasing her. Fraser Umbitak ran for her life. She had used up almost all of her magic power to escape. She had no choice. The giant Anubis construct was too invincible. She could not win. It was impossible. Suddenly, Fraser saw two figures walking towards her with their hands in their pockets. Run! Quick run, there's a big guy coming over here. Fraser Umbitak screamed. What's she shouting? Chen Zhao turned his head and asked Bifla. She's telling us to run, Bifla said. There's a big guy chasing her. Chen Zhao flicked his finger. The crow circling above Fraser's head was shot down. Now you hear it, Chen Zhao said. What's that thing? Don't tell me it's the legendary Egyptian god of death, Anubis. It's created according to the mythical Anubis. It's called the Anubis construct. Looks pretty powerful. Chapter 2173. When Fraser saw the two, it was as if she didn't see the huge Anubis construct behind her. It was still walking toward her. Go! Fraser didn't stop at all when she reached the two. She just turned her head and shouted at them. Chen Zhao and Bifla didn't stop. Can I attack? No, Bifla said. You can only protect yourself if it attacks first. Fine. Chen Zhao shrugged. Fraser suddenly stopped and looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla behind her. By then, the huge Anubis construct had already reached her. Run! The huge Anubis construct swiped its claw at Chen Zhao. Can we do it now? Yes, Bifla said. Slap! Fraser's pupils constricted. The terrifying huge Anubis construct's body exploded. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, dyeing the walls on the side of the road black. The Asian only waved his fist casually. The other man, who seemed to be from Central Asia, didn't move at all. The two of them continued to walk forward. Fraser Umbitak panted heavily. That insufferably arrogant giant Anubis construct was killed just like that. Who were those two people? Fraser hesitated for a moment. She looked at the colorful pearl on the ground. It was left by the huge Anubis construct. If she could obtain the 5-colored demon pearl, then she and her team would definitely be able to successfully pass the first trial assessment. However, the spoils of war belonged to those two. If they weren't willing to give it to her, she would be killed even if she reached out for it. She wasn't stupid enough to think that she could defeat those two men. However, The two of them did not seem to notice the five-colored demon pearl, and continued to walk forward. Or rather, it wasn't that they didn't notice the pearl. They didn't care at all. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. In the eyes of these two, monsters of this level couldn't even be considered as prey. If they needed it, they could easily pass the trial. Fraser wasn't that extravagant. Even if it had nothing to do with the trial, this five-colored demon pearl was still very valuable. After all, any spoils of war obtained in the Battle of Holy Glory belonged to the individual. Even if she only brought back a five-colored demonic pearl, it would be enough to give her father and many other members an explanation. Fraser hesitated for a moment before finally running towards the two of them. "Gentlemen," Fraser Umbitak called out. "She can see you," Chen Zhao said. "I'm not a ghost." "Of course I can see," Bifla said coldly. "But there were so many people earlier, but none of them saw you." Chen Zhao glanced at Fraser. "Or is she really strong, at least stronger than the others?" "No, she's a descendant of the Hui Society. The Hui Society has special magic, so it's not strange that she noticed me." "Sirs, do you not want your spoils of war?" "You mean that demonic pearl?" "It's of no use to us," Bifla said. "You sure know how to use my things as a favor." Chen Zhao pursed his lips. "Okay, I won't disturb your trial anymore," Bifla said coolly. "Let's go." Just then a group of people walked over. The leader was covered in a black cloak. His face was also covered by a black veil. There was even a crow standing on his shoulder. "No one has ever dared to kill my pet. You're the first." Fraser Umbitak's expression changed drastically. Crow. The leader was Crow. In the Battle of Holy Glory, there were good and evil. But no one was as arrogant as Crow and his subordinates. Crow had always been arrogant. Apparently, he participated in many battles of Holy Glory. The requirement for this year's Battle of Holy Glory was that the contestants were under 40. But Crow had still come. But apparently, he wasn't the first Crow. No one knew if he was or not, because no one knew what he looked like. "Hey, he's here for you." Chen Zhao pointed at Bifla and threw the blame at Bifla. "He killed Crow. You can find him. It has nothing to do with me. You don't have to push it. You're all going to die." Crow laughed cruelly. "Caw caw." The crow on his shoulder also cawed strangely. "So ear-piercing." Chen Zhao frowned. "That's a corpse spirit crow," Bifla said calmly. "They can make a sound that can disturb one's mind. For people with weak minds, it is very likely that they will become crazy after listening to this strange sound for an hour. Even people of your level will feel uncomfortable. Even I hate it." "Sirs, that guy is Crow. You better not be careless," Fraser Umbitak said seriously. "Didn't you say we can't kill people in the barren land?" Chen Zhao asked, turning his head. "That guy is Crow. He has ways to not kill you directly, but you'll die in pain." "I see." Rubbing his chin, Chen Zhao turned to Bifla and asked, "Does that mean I can kill him now?" "Not yet." Caw, suddenly, the corpse crow on Crow's shoulder pounced at Chen Zhao. "You can now," Bifla said. "Hey, he's the one who killed your pet. Why did you attack me first?" Chen Zhao flicked his finger again, turning the corpse crow into a bloody pulp. If Crow wasn't wearing a mask, his face would definitely be black. Chen Zhao's finger trembled. "Seriously, you should still choose him as your opponent. If it's him, you still have a small chance of escaping." "Ha!" Crow laughed coldly. "Are you doubting me?" The next moment, Bifla's voice came from behind Crow. Crow's laughter stopped abruptly. The other Crow tribe members also moved away. They stared in disbelief at Bifla, who had suddenly appeared behind Crow. Crow jumped a dozen meters away and stared at Bifla in shock. "How did you appear behind me?" "Teleportation." "No. There's no ripple. How did you do it?" "The difference in power is too great. There's no point in telling you this. Plus, you're about to die. I have no obligation to explain to a dead person, a lowly ant." The crow let out a cruel smile. "Do you really think that you can defeat me with just a quick movement spell?" Chapter 2174. Crow suddenly opened his cloak, and in an instant, hundreds of corpse soul crows leapt out from under his cloak. The crows covered the sky and flew toward Bifla. However, Before the corpse soul crows could even touch Bifla, they fell like rain. There was no way to attack. At least, Chinzhao couldn't tell how Bifla attacked. But it was the same as killing the criminals. Crow's expression changed. If Chinzhao couldn't tell, Crow and his subordinates couldn't either. What was going on? Fraser Ambitak also had a surprised look on his face. She'd never met someone as strong as Bifla before. Even her father was insignificant compared to Bifla. Bifla's strength wasn't because of his aura or terrifying pressure. It was because he was silent. Even if he stood before them, he was as ethereal as air. Crow glanced at his subordinates. Attack together. At the same time, all sorts of spells shot towards Bifla. But Bifla didn't move. On the other hand, Fraser Umbitak, who was watching from the side, felt his heart skip a beat. Crow and his subordinates weren't weak. In fact, they were a bit too strong. Even the gigantic Anubis construct from before would not be able to withstand the attacks of the 10 of them. But before the spells could touch Bifla, they returned to their most primitive mana and were absorbed by Bifla. Of course, Crow and his subordinates didn't know that their spells had become mana and were absorbed by Bifla. But Chen Zhao could feel that Bifla's move was very similar to his non-elemental constitution. But Bifla seemed to be of a higher level. Chen Zhao's non-elemental constitution could only disintegrate directional spells. But Bifla didn't just disintegrate them. He even absorbed them into mana. It was similar to the mouth of gluttony. Crow and his subordinates weren't satisfied. They kept attacking Bifla crazily. Bifla didn't reject them. No matter how many spells they threw at him, he absorbed them all. After a while, Crow and his subordinates used up 30 to 40% of their mana. Bifla still stood there. No matter what spell they used, it couldn't really hit Bifla. How could they fight? Bifla was already invincible. In the end, they still stopped. Are you tired? It's my turn to attack. Bifla raised the back of his hand. His arm and palm were hanging limply in front of him, as if they were boneless. Crow and his men were all bristling with anger. Danger! 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 This man was extremely dangerous. The crow subconsciously used its life-saving trump card. The others did the same, each displaying their own strengths. Bifla suddenly made a grabbing motion, and a wave of heat surged forth. A giant flaming claw appeared out of thin air and grabbed all 10 of them. Ah! Help! A black corpse soul crow flapped its flaming wings, frantically trying to escape from the flaming claws. This black corpse soul crow was the crow's transformation spell. However, he didn't even have the chance to dodge. The flaming claw exploded in an instant. This explosion did not spread outwards but collapsed inwards. Even the soul-devouring crow that the crow had transformed into was sucked into the collapse by the huge pulling force. In the end, everything turned into a red dot and disappeared. These people aren't bad. The magic they provided me can actually use the claw of destruction, Bifla said casually. They're quite strong. Fraser Imbritak stared at Bifla in fear. Too strong. This man was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. What he was facing was Crow and his team. They weren't just any team. Crow and his team were definitely the strongest participants in this battle of the Holy Glory. However, such a strong team had been killed so easily. Who was this man? Why did he have such terrifying power? This spell is so cool, Chen Zhao exclaimed. His focus wasn't on the power. The claw of destruction was indeed shocking to normal spiritualists. However, in his eyes it wasn't enough. It was like the giant palm that Chen Zhao had condensed with the power of the world. It looked powerful, but it was actually useless to people of the same level. Bifla's claw of destruction was the same. There seems to be a battle over there, Bifla said. Let's go take a look. Sure, how far? Chen Zhao didn't sense any battle ripples. Bifla could actually sense a battle that was beyond his range of perception. Chen Zhao somewhat admired Bifla. After all, in terms of combat ability, Chen Zhao was definitely above him. However, Bifla was an old monster that had lived for hundreds of years. His knowledge and understanding of magic were definitely not something Chen Zhao could compare to. Fraser Imbritak wanted to talk to Chen Zhao and Bifla a bit more. She didn't dare to say that she could become friends with them, but she could at least let them get to know her. Perhaps she would need them to take care of her in the future. There was no harm in getting to know them. Unfortunately, she was still one step too late. Bifla and Chen Zhao's sudden departure dumbfounded Fraser Embrytak. How could she not understand now? These two were definitely the top existences in the spiritual world. They might not even be participants. They were probably invited guests. She hoped that the invited guests wouldn't be test targets in the future. Otherwise, it would be big trouble. In the past Battle of Holy Glory, special guests were invited to be in charge of assessing the participants. However, there were strong and weak guests among the invited guests. Of course, it would be good if they met a weaker guest. However, if this year's Battle of the Holy Glory used invited guests to test the participants again, and if they met these two people, it wouldn't be about passing the test. It would be about staying alive. It could be seen from the two's casual attacks. Even a casual attack from them would probably result in a disaster. Bifla, where's your team? Are they here? They're here, Bifla said calmly. But I can't sense their location. It can't be. I can sense my team. How can you not sense it? They're good at hiding. If they're within a certain range, I can sense their aura. But they're too far away, so I can't. Maybe they've already been eliminated. Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao indifferently. No, they're all very strong. Not necessarily. There are many strong people here. My students are the best. Chapter 2175. Chen Zhao and Bifla arrived beside a lake. The two stood by the lake. Right now, a huge battle was happening above the lake. Around a dozen teams were engaged in a chaotic battle. The strength of these dozen or so teams was quite impressive. Chen Zhao and Bifla stood by the lake and watched the battle. An elemental ice mage created a huge block of ice. At the same time, this piece of ice also became everyone's battlefield. The battle was very intense, but everyone held back. Most people didn't use their full strength. They didn't want to kill either. Everyone had some restraint. Thus, to Chen Zhao and Bifla, this battle was rather boring. What are they fighting for? Chen Zhao asked. Why do you think they're definitely fighting for something? Bifla asked. Apart from fighting for something, they're fighting because they have nothing better to do. They're not fighting for something. It's because they have grudges outside, and they want to weaken their opponents, Bifla said. Bifla said, that blue-robed Taoist nun is from Mount Longhu. Everyone here who is wearing Taoist robes is from Mount Longhu. They can be said to be seated contestants, and their strength is quite good. Chen Zhao looked in the direction Bifla was pointing. There was indeed an eye-catching nun. 6 people were ganging up on her, but they couldn't do anything to her. Looks like they're not all ganging up on them, Chen Zhao said. Of course, every organization has its own allies, not to mention a sect like Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect that has a positive image. Many of the teams that are willing to help them and fight with them have learned from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect, or are willing to do them a favor. Of course, there are also teams that are helping Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect purely because of personal grudges. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin, wondering if he should join in. You'd better keep your thoughts to yourself. For such a large-scale battle, the organizers will definitely keep a close eye on you. Especially when the two of us came. We didn't hide our whereabouts. The organizers' spies should have already noticed us. If you interfere with this battle royale at this time, it's likely that you'll be blacklisted. It doesn't matter even if I'm on the blacklist, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. Can they kill me? Maybe they won't directly target you, but you have a team. If the organizers can't target you, can't they target your team? Chen Zhao thought about it and realized that it made sense. Forget it. If you don't want to play, then so be it. Senior Sister Zhu Bai, there are 2 people by the lake. They have been observing for a long time. I don't know if they are friends or foes. Zhu Bai glanced at Chen Zhao and Bifla by the lake. In fact, she had already seen the 2 of them. However, she didn't have the time to think about whether they were friend or foe. Although her senior and junior brothers helped to relieve the pressure on her. But the situation was not optimistic. After all, there were only 5 teams on her side, including the team from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect. Their opponents, on the other hand, had 9 teams, which was almost twice their number. The Celestial Master Sect of Longhu Mountain was indeed very strong. However, blocking 3 teams at the same time was already their limit. Any more and they would definitely lose. The other teams on the same side could only fight one-on-one at most. Therefore, the situation was very disadvantageous to them. The opponent's goal was very clear. It was to stall the Celestial Master Sect's team first. Then, they would defeat the other allied teams one by one. Finally, they would turn around and deal with the Celestial Master Sect. The situation was tense, but Zhubai's mind was as clear as water. Right now, the entire situation was in her head. With the Celestial Master Sect's team's strength, it wasn't impossible for them to leave. However, the problem now was that if they left now, then they would be abandoning their allies. If the outcome of this Holy Glory battle was related to honor, then abandoning their allies was equivalent to abandoning their honor. Zhubai would rather lose her entire team than do something that would humiliate her sect. Even if she didn't get the title of Holy Glory, it didn't mean that the Celestial Master Sect was weak. However, if she did something that would humiliate her sect, then the entire sect would be humiliated. The opponent's goal was also very simple, to steal their spoils. If they could injure a few people from the Celestial Master Sect, so that they couldn't participate in the next competition, that would be for the best. However, the two people outside the battle zone were indeed potential threats. Their goal was likely to be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Another possibility was that they were unaffiliated spiritualists. As for the idle spiritualists who accepted the invitation to the Battle of Holy Glory, every single one of them was powerful. Thus, Zhubai couldn't let her guard down. However, Zhubai's energy alone was limited. Just as she was thinking about her strategy, her attack and defense weakened. At this moment, Zhubai's heart suddenly became alert. Danger! Zhubai jumped away subconsciously. Then, the ice floe she was standing on suddenly exploded. A figure shot toward Zhubai from under the ice floe. Zhubai immediately took out her horsetail whisk. 1,000 threads swept toward the figure. The figure had already lost the initiative after missing the first attack. Now it wanted to attack Zhubai directly. However, there was still a difference in strength between them. He was instantly swept up by Zhubai's horsetail whisk. Zhubai's heart jumped. She suddenly threw the person into the air. The person smashed toward Chen Zhao and Bifla on the shore. She's attacking us, right? We can fight back, right? Chen Zhao asked immediately. No. Even though you and I both know that she's attacking us on purpose, we made a mistake first. Even if we asked the organizers to judge, we're not in the right. What do you mean we made a mistake first? I didn't do that. No, when they were fighting, we entered the danger zone. The organizer has a rule that if the spectators enter a battle circle rashly, even if they are attacked, they are not allowed to fight back. Even if they want to watch the battle, they have to keep a distance. So, in the end, we were the ones who made the mistake first. So troublesome. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. He looked at the spiritualist who had fallen before him. The spiritualist had fallen more than 10 meters away, but he wasn't seriously injured. At least he still had some combat ability. His first reaction when he saw Chen Zhao and Bifla was to attack. In this chaotic battle, anyone who wasn't a friend was an enemy. Chen Zhao kicked the spiritualist back into the battle. This was the first time Chen Zhao had stayed out of a battle in the spiritual world with this identity. Chen Zhao's hands itched, but it wasn't convenient for him to attack. After all, he was now a senior in the spiritual world. Chapter 2176. As the battle continued, it started to go out of control. More and more teams joined the battle. Many teams had grudges against each other. Even if they were on the same side, there were still grudges. Or maybe both sides had grudges. This led to internal problems on both sides. There were already a dozen teams fighting. An hour later, there were more than 30 teams. The two sides had turned into a multi-sided battle. More than 300 spiritualists were attacking each other. All sorts of dazzling spells, and spells flew everywhere. Chen Zhao was dazed, as if he'd transmigrated to a magical world. However, this battle was also extremely enjoyable to watch. Chen Zhao had been in the spiritual world for 2 years. He'd even become the president of a supernatural organization. But this was the first time he'd seen a real magical battle. Just then, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. They covered the entire lake and the surrounding area. At first, no one noticed the dark clouds in the sky, but soon, someone realized the problem. They were in an alternate dimension. There were no weather changes in the alternate dimension. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. It landed in the center of the battlefield, on the huge ice floe. There had been 20 to 30 spiritualists fighting on the ice floe. This was because when this bolt of lightning landed, it blasted the 30-odd spiritualists into the air. The ice floe, which was at least 300 square meters, shattered instantly. Just then a figure appeared in the sky. The figure looked like a celestial, as if a fairy had descended. Chen Zhao looked over. Wasn't that Zhang Tianyi? But Chen Zhao had never seen Zhang Tianyi dressed like this. Zhang Tianyi gave off an aura that made people want to worship him. He looked down at the living beings below him from above. Isn't this against the rules? Chen Zhao said, pointing at Zhang Tianyi. He has the right. He has the right to do so. He was originally one of the 3 chairmen elected by the Holy Glory organizers, and he is also responsible for enforcing the law during the Battle of Holy Glory. But he disrupted the battle. He didn't disrupt the battle. If the battle continues, a large number of thoughts may appear, and it may even affect the progress of the Holy Glory battle. That's why he appeared to stop the battle from worsening. That's favoritism. Didn't you notice? There's no one from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master sect on the floating ice. If it were you, what would you do? Of course, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. I'll blast them into pieces. So, isn't it only natural for Celestial Master Zhang to do this? Many of the teams below dared not speak out even though they were angry. After all, he was Zhang Tianyi. All right, everyone disperse. Zhang Tianyi waved his hand and said. A few groups of people were still unwilling to give up. They thought that they had the upper hand just now. There was a high chance that they could cause trouble for Zhu Bai's team. But Zhang Tianhing's interference made their advantage disappear in an instant. In fact, once Zhu Bai's team recovered and turned around to deal with them, they would be in danger. Therefore, when they left, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Zhu Bai heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she could feel that her grandmaster's appearance was too ingenious. The situation just now was already very dangerous. If their grandmaster didn't show up, then they would most likely lose a lot of people. The other teams left one after another. Zhu Bai looked up at Zhang Tianyi in the sky. Just then, Zhang Tianyi descended from the sky. Zhu Bai and the other teammates all waved their sleeves and lowered their heads, waiting to greet Zhang Tianyi. However, Zhang Tianyi didn't land in front of them. Instead, he landed by the lake. Zhu Bai looked over and realized that it was the 2 people from before. Zhu Bai remembered very clearly that those 2 people had arrived an hour ago. They had been standing by the lake and watching the chaotic battle. At first, Zhu Bai thought that they were trying to take advantage of the situation. However, they didn't do anything. Even if someone attacked them, they would only dodge. Zhu Bai thought that they had already left. She didn't expect them to still be there. Hi, old Zhang. Chen Zhao greeted Zhang Tianyi grinning. Zhang Tianyi glanced at Chen Zhao and Baifla. You guys didn't behave at all when you came in. We're all following the rules, Chen Zhao said confidently. If not, would you still be here? Zhang Tianyi sneered. Baifla looked at Zhang Tianyi. You purposely lured Crow to us, right? Chen Zhao was stunned. Was that true? Didn't they just meet Crow by chance? What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm being kept in the dark? You think it's a coincidence? Isn't it? The woman who was being chased by the Anubis construct was deliberately led to us. At that time, the crow's pet was following the woman, and you coincidentally killed the crow's pet. Naturally, the crow came to us. You need evidence, Zhang Tianyi said, dissatisfied. We're spiritualists, Baifla said calmly. As long as it's a suspicion, it's the truth. We don't need evidence. That's true. Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, this is hard for me. Using us to get rid of the hated team of the organizers is just using us. I hate it when people scheme against me. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. Just say what you need, Zhang Tianyi said with a dark expression. Don't beat around the bush. I don't need much, Chen Zhao said with a smile. I just want the entire process of the Battle of Holy Glory. I can't give you the entire process, Chen Zhao said with a reasonable smile. After all, we're still researching the process. We don't have definite results yet, so I can't give it to you even if I want to. I can give you the process of the next project. If you accept it, then we're even. If not, then forget it. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances. Bifla nodded slightly, indicating that he accepted the condition. How about something more practical like cash compensation? Chen Zhao suggested. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla couldn't help but roll their eyes. The second test is to find the soul essence stone. After the first round, the desolate land market will be rearranged to hide at least 1,000 soul essence stones. Only those who find at least one soul essence stone can pass. So only 1,000 people are left for the second test. At most, Zhang Tianyi said. Maybe less than 1,000 can find the soul stone. Chapter 2177. How about you tell me a few places to hide them? Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Do you think that's possible? Since you've already made an exception once, I don't think you mind making an exception a second time. I do. The test you and the organizer chose isn't fair at all, Chen Zhao complained. Some spiritualists are good at searching, some are good at predicting, and some are good at detecting, but some are only good at fighting. How are they supposed to find them? There's nothing absolutely fair in this world. Also, do you think the second test is better for the spiritualists you mentioned? Isn't it? Other than 1,000 real soul essence stones, there are 10,000 fake soul essence stones. Whether they are real or fake, they are guarded by a lot of demon beasts and magical beasts. Among them, there are a lot of powerful demon beasts and magical beasts. What about the spiritualists who are good at searching, sensing, detecting, and prophecy? Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Zhang Tianyi had a somewhat victorious smile. Even if he won in a verbal battle, it was still a victory. You're so boring. Chen Zhao turned and left. Celestial Master Zhang, goodbye. Bifla also left with Chen Zhao. Just then, Zhu Bai and the other disciples walked over. Greetings, Grandmaster. Okay, during the Battle of the Holy Glory, don't call me Grandmaster. I'm the Elder of Discipline, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said. All right, it's not convenient for me to communicate with you now. Let's wait until the Battle of Holy Glory is over. Yes, Grandmaster. By the way, Zhang Tianyi hesitated for a moment before reminding them. If you encounter those two people again, avoid them if you can. Don't get into a dispute with them. Don't have any disputes at all. Grandmaster. Who are those two? 2 asterisks holes. Ignore them. As long as you don't provoke them first, they won't attack you. Yes, Grandmaster. All right, I've said enough. It's time to go. With that, Zhang Tianyi's figure gradually disappeared before Zhu Bai and the others. Zhu Bai and the others had no idea how Zhang Tianyi disappeared. A few seconds later, Zhang Tianyi appeared on the rooftop of a building. The 23rd generation Blood Mary also appeared on the rooftop of the building. Old Zhang, you're talking too much with your disciples and grand-disciples. It's against the rules. What I'm talking about is unrelated to this event. The 23rd Blood Mary didn't plan to pursue the matter any further. She had known Zhang Tianyi for almost 100 years, so she knew his character very well. I found traces of the Hermit Order, the 23rd Blood Mary said. Hidden Cultivators Sect. Zhang Tianyi's expression changed. Yes, that troublesome organization. Why did these mad dogs come out? Zhang Tianyi asked. The reason why they were called mad dogs was because the Hermit Order never did anything proper, only doing bad things. They were present in the 2 world-class wars of the last century, and in those 2 world wars, mortals fought against mortals. On the other hand, the spiritual realm was fighting against the Hidden Cultivators Sect. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Hidden Cultivators Sect can go against the entire spiritual world. In reality, the Hermit Order wouldn't directly oppose other organizations most of the time. They were troublemakers, all kinds of troublemakers, all kinds of moths. For example, he could create a few calamity-grade monsters. For example, he could release a few legendary demon lords. Or perhaps he could release a few large-scale catastrophic magic spells. In any case, during that era, if a supernatural disaster were to occur in any part of the world, the first thing that the spirit controllers thought of would be the Hermit Order. Moreover, this kind of conjecture was most likely correct. Speaking of which, the hermit order's ambition wasn't that bad. After all, everyone has their own dreams. It was just that they were a bit out of touch with the times. 100 years ago, having such a dream would have been considered noble. 100 years later, if they still had such a dream, that would be considered low. World domination. Indeed, the hermit order's ambition was to rule the world. Furthermore, they had been working tirelessly towards that goal. Furthermore, they did very well in the first phase. The first phase of their plan was to cause destruction. However, other than the first phase, they didn't seem to know how to proceed with the second phase of their plan. Or rather, they didn't even have a second phase of their plan. Especially after the severe beatings. Even in the spiritual world, there were severe beatings. The current prosperity and stability of the spiritual world was created through repeated beatings. Fighting against evil, upholding justice and fairness, even in the spiritual world, that was what they advocated. Of course, there were also some outdated rules and bad habits. Furthermore, the concept of fairness in the spiritual world was different from that of the mortal world. In the spiritual world, the hierarchy was even more obvious. Because most of the time, the higher the hierarchy, the more powerful they were. For example, Zhang Tianyi, he was in existence at the top of the pyramid. At the same time, the reason why he was able to stand at the top of the pyramid was because of his strength. What did they do this time? Their target was Wendy, the 23rd Blood Mary replied. The 23rd generation Blood Mary said. Wendy was ambushed. Of course, it was just a probing attack. Wendy was unscathed and used the attackers as fertilizer. Wendy was one of the 3 chairmen of Holy Glory. The Anubis constructs here were created by him. There were over 100,000 Anubis constructs in the wasteland market. And these 100,000 Anubis constructs were created by Wendy himself, without the help of anyone else. How much mana was needed to create such a large number of Anubis constructs? Not to mention, such a large project wasn't something that could be completed by human effort. And yet, Wendy managed to accomplish such an impossible task all by himself. Don't tell me the Hermit Order's goal is to obtain the Anubis constructs technology from Wendy? That's possible, the 23rd Blood Mary nodded. How about we seal Wendy away? That way, the Hermit Order won't be able to find him no matter how much trouble they cause, Zhang Tianyi smiled and said. Sure, if you want to do it yourself. I don't want to experience the world's #1 alchemist. Alright, I was just joking. Wendy was the world's #1 alchemist. No one in this world could seal him away. Wendy was the weakest of the 3 chairmen. But he was also the most terrifying one. There was no one at the same level as him who could defeat him. Even Zhang Tianyi didn't want to get into a conflict with Wendy. During this Holy Glory battle, Wendy was responsible for creating all of the tools used in the assessment and trial. However, while those rabid dogs are crazy, their probing attack this time was a bit crude. The people they sent weren't able to probe Wendy's strength, but instead raised our guard. Do you really think they would be so reckless? Chapter 2178. At this moment, in one of the ruins, a few spiritualists had proud and complacent looks on their faces. His words were filled with a strong sense of pride and disdain. One of them was dressed rather exaggeratedly with a mustache and colorful clothes like a clown. However, it was worth noting that one of his eyes was green, and the other was purple. I'm leading them by the nose now. They think our target is the technology in Wen's hands, but they don't know that our real target isn't Wen at all. Another big guy sitting cross-legged on the ground said in a rude voice, Marfa, I just want to know when I can do something big. When can I make a ruckus and kill without restraint? Hulus don't rush, Marfa said. You'll be able to do whatever you want soon. There was also a super fat guy hiding in a corner. He kept eating. While these people were discussing, they suddenly heard a commotion coming from not far away. A woman in green appeared on the wall. A team is outside. Huh. Did they notice us? No. Can you let me kill them? Hulus asked. Marfa thought for a while and said, Sure, but the battlefield is limited to this ruin. If we go beyond this ruin, we'll be discovered by the monitors. They can't escape this ruin. Hulu's grinned, revealing his fangs. West and the others searched aimlessly. None of them knew how to track the Anubis structures. Thus, they could only wander aimlessly. Luckily, there were many Anubis structures in the entire wasteland market. Along the way, they had hunted quite a lot. Of course, they also encountered other teams. But most teams didn't fight with them. Everyone kept a certain distance. Not every team was so arrogant and rude. Most teams still maintained a sense of caution and respect for each other. Of course, not every team was willing to coexist peacefully either. Some teams would still stir up some trouble. They would first test the strength of the Supernatural Organizations team. If the Supernatural Organizations team wasn't strong enough, they would definitely start a fight. If the Supernatural Organizations team was strong, they would choose to retreat. To put it bluntly, it was bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Fortunately, the Supernatural Organization was not weak. Apart from the first team they encountered, the two sides had engaged in a fierce battle, and they even snatched the other party's demon pearl. At other times, it was just a small friction. The Supernatural Organization thought it was a good idea to fight for other teams' loot. Let's not talk about the risks first. At least in terms of efficiency, it wasn't as fast as killing monsters. That was why they were more willing to hunt the constructs of Anubis, rather than going up against other teams. At this moment, Mord suddenly stopped. There are others here. Everyone stopped in their tracks as well. At this time, a few figures walked out from behind a wall. Alarm bells were ringing in everyone's hearts. These people were extremely dangerous. Even if they didn't make any moves, they didn't feel any pressure. However, the people from the association could feel that the people in front of them were extremely dangerous. Hulu's, I'll leave them to you, Marfa said indifferently. I will catch up to you soon. A cruel smile appeared on Hulu's face. Just like that, the few of them left Hulu's behind, while the others turned around and left. Everyone in the association narrowed their eyes. They had encountered quite a few arrogant teams, but none had been as arrogant as the people in front of them. One person against 10 of them? This was no longer arrogance. This was arrogance. Mord didn't wait for them to leave. He attacked first. Lava vines. In an instant, countless vines drilled out of the ground and madly attacked the people in front of them. Hulu suddenly swung his arms and slashed out in a cross. Hulu's slash created a meat grinder space within a 30-meter radius. Everything within this space was sliced apart. All the lava vines were instantly sliced into pieces. Marfa and the others turned to look at the people from the association, surprised. They look quite strong. Hulu's, are you sure you can handle them alone? Strong? Why didn't I notice? Hulu's rubbed his 10 fingers together. His fingers had sharp claws like those of a carnivore, and his exposed skin was covered in thick fur. However, he was still in his human form. There weren't many changes. Alright, let's go. Suddenly, Dongya Tianchi attacked. His attack was as swift as the wind. The white-faced phantom demon slashed at Hulu's. Hulu's claws reached for the blade. Dongya Tianchi's expression changed. There was nothing the white-faced phantom demon couldn't cut. But it couldn't cut through Hulu's claws. At the same time, he realized that he couldn't pull the sword out. Gaia also attacked. The great sword on her back ignited in flames the moment she pulled it out. The flaming greatsword slashed at Hulu's. Hulu's had been holding the sword with both claws. Seeing Gaia's attack coming, he immediately used one hand to grab the flaming greatsword. Gaia also realized that her strength and the flaming greatsword couldn't cut through Hulu's palm. In fact, in terms of strength, she was much weaker than Hulu's. Just then Lisa launched an attack. She aimed at Hulu's body from a distance. Boom! Hulu's was sent flying dozens of meters away. But Hulu's still managed to stand up, seemingly unharmed. This was unexpected, but also within the association's expectations. As confident as they were, they had to admit that this man was very powerful. This man was very powerful. If they were even slightly careless, it was very likely that they would suffer a crushing defeat here. Hulu's grinned, revealing a mouthful of fangs. You guys are very powerful. To show my respect, I've decided to kill you in my second form. Everyone's expression changed. Did he not use his full strength just now? Hulu's limbs and torso began to thicken. His clothes were torn, revealing his greenish-black fur. His face had changed slightly. He now looked like a beast, but he still looked more like a human. His body grew from nearly 2 meters to at least 3.5 meters. "Are you ready to die?" Boom! A terrifying fireball blasted Hulu's body. "If you want to fight, then fight." "Cut the crap," Jalanash said. Chapter 2179. Okay. Hulu suddenly jumped up and charged at Jalanash. But at that moment, Hulu felt the air freeze. Then he froze. Wes pointed his finger at his temple and released all his magic. One had to admit that Hulu's was unbelievably strong. In the past, he had been able to control the field, and even if he had to face dozens of people, he could still easily stop them. But Hulu's made his magic power pour out like a tidal wave. The moment Hulu's was immobilized, Dongya Tianqi launched a sneak attack. One-word script. Dongya Tianqi roared. A huge sword energy slashed at Hulu's. But it couldn't tear through Hulu's defense in the end. Dongya Tianqi's defense was astonishing. One should know that Dongya Tianqi's blade could even split a building in half. But it couldn't cut through Hulu's skin. Hulu's grinned. He could feel that although West had locked him in place, he had to consume a large amount of mana. He didn't need to waste too much energy to drag it out until West was exhausted. West decided to stop the slow field before he ran out of magic. Just then Norma attacked. Norma's soul came out of his body and turned into a nightmare horse. The nightmare walked in the air. Each step left a green flame flower in the air. When the nightmare shapeshifter arrived in front of Hulu's, its 2 hooves stomped on Hulu's chest. But it didn't do any damage to Hulu's. Of course, this was also because it wasn't a physical attack. Hulu's body shook slightly. Then, he swung his arm and shattered the nightmare. The nightmare turned into green flames and reformed. Norma, is it useless? His soul and body are too closely connected. I can't blast his soul out of his body. There was still a big gap between their abilities. This made Norma's attack seem very weak. It was just like how Norma couldn't blast Chen Zhao's soul out of his body, because Chen Zhao's power and the strength of his soul weren't something Norma could shake. Although Hulu's wasn't as strong as Chen Zhao, he still had an unshakable soul. Of course, Norma's attack wasn't completely useless. At the very least, Norma's soul attack was a deterrent to Hulu's. Hulu's glanced at Norma's nightmare form. He knew that no matter how he attacked it, it would be useless. But soon, his gaze landed on Norma's flesh. Then he charged towards Norma's body. Gaia instantly transformed into a fire dragon and spat out a dragon's breath at Hulu's. Hulu's eyelids twitched. He didn't expect Gaia to be a mixed-blood dragon. He did not want to be hit by this dragon breath. Therefore, he immediately dodged. However, just as he was about to dodge, a figure blocked his path even faster than him. An elite took action. Previously, he had not made a move. He grasped this opportunity. The dragonbone dagger in his hand stabbed towards Hulu's throat. Hulu's tensed up. He could feel the threat of an elite and the bone dagger in his hand. At some point, Hulu's tensed his muscles. The dragonbone dagger in Angelite's hand only pierced into the skin, but there was no sensation to speak of. It was obvious that his meticulous attack did not cause any substantial damage to Hulu's. Taking advantage of Angelite's pause, Hulu's punched towards an elite. Although he was not as fast as an elite, he was still very fast. An elite was so scared that he immediately stepped back, and the fist brushed past him. Bang! There was a sonic boom in the air. An elite had already retreated 20 meters. If he had been hit by that punch just now, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. An elite was the fastest man in the association. However, his defense was very weak. At this moment, Gaia's dragon tail swept towards Hulu's. Hulu's grabbed the dragon's tail and swept it horizontally. The fire dragon that Gaia had transformed into was smashed into a mess. Gaia turned around and unleashed dragon breath. Hulu's once again dodged at high speed. Just as Gaia was about to get up, Hulu's had already descended from the sky and smashed heavily into Gaia's head. Gaia spat out blood. Hulu's picked up the dragon tooth that Gaia had spat out. What an enjoyable battle. I did not expect to be able to hunt a dragon. Although it is only a young dragon, Let me be a dragon slayer today. Boom! Due to Hulu's carelessness, Lisa's sneak attack was successful. Lisa knew when was the best time to attack. Although Hulu's did not receive much damage, Lisa's 2 sneak attacks had infuriated him. Stupid little bug. Hulu's directly charged towards Lisa this time. However, at the next moment a dark cloud shrouded Hulu's. Hulu's body stopped in midair and quickly retreated. Death Mage. Hulu's frowned. This was the first time he showed such an expression. At the same time, he felt that his body was showing signs of being corroded. He did not notice it at all during the intense battle with the others. The aura of death had unknowingly invaded his body. Although the amount of aura of death was not large, it was not enough to pose a fatal threat to him. The effect it could have on him was minimal. However, if he continued to be delayed by the others, if he continued to inhale more aura of death, he might really fail miserably. Hulu's knew his strengths and his weaknesses. Death mages were also the type that he disliked fighting the most. That was because the opponent's attack method was too strange. Most of the time, he did not even notice it, and he would already be hit. Although Helios looked calm on the surface, but she did not think that she alone would be Hulu's opponent. Even so, many of her companions were unable to pose a threat to Hulu's. She was afraid that she would not be able to do anything alone. However, what surprised her was that Hulu's actually chose to retreat. Very good, your strength is not bad. I will let you go this time. However, the next time I meet you, you will see how terrifying my third form is. Everyone's eyelids twitched. This kind of monstrous strength. Is this still not his strongest strength? He still has a third form? Everyone's heart was shrouded in a layer of haze. In the battle just now, no one dared to say that they used their full strength. However, they were at least 80%. Even so, they were still at a disadvantage when facing Hulu's alone. If Hulu's did not go easy on them, and directly used his third form, how many of them would still be alive now? This dragon tooth belongs to me. As for the dragon head, I will temporarily keep it. Next time, I will complete this dragon-slaying feat. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor. Chapter 2180. Crushing Defeat. Everyone in the association was dispirited. This was the first crushing defeat they'd suffered since Chen Zhao became the president. They couldn't even find an excuse. If that person hadn't retreated, if that person had used the third form from the start, if he had the third form, in that case, it was very likely that they would be completely annihilated. West clapped his hands and said loudly, "Okay kids, how long are you going to slack off? Can a single loss really defeat all of you?" West had to pull himself together now. He was the leader, so he had to lead, even though he was also feeling depressed. But he couldn't show it. He had to pretend to be strong. Actually, why didn't that person use the third form? Everyone knew. That person might not be familiar with the third form. He might lose control or become obsessed. There was another possibility. The third form wouldn't last long. It wouldn't be of critical use. Unless they had no other choice, it was better not to use it. Maybe I should inform the president now. Seeing that everyone was still depressed, Wes could only say something harsh. Gaia wiped the blood from her mouth and stood up. "Don't inform anyone. I haven't been defeated yet." Flames burned in her eyes. "Next time, I'll use my own power to take revenge." At the same time, Chen Zhao, who didn't know anything, was still wandering around. The Baron Bazaar was very big. Chen Zhao and Biflo wouldn't be able to finish it in 3 days and 3 nights. There were also battlefields everywhere. Battles between teams. Battles between teams and Anubis constructs. It was an eye-opener for Chen Zhao. That's right, it was an eye-opener. Chen Zhao realized that he'd been too narrow in the past. Although Chen Zhao had interacted with many high-level and powerful beings, he had never met anyone who was as powerful as him. But he didn't know much about truly brilliant magic and spells. Only now did Chen Zhao realize that the brilliance and richness of magic were enough to make anyone gasp in amazement. Right now, Chen Zhao and Biflo were standing on the rooftop of a skyscraper. A fierce battle was taking place in the square directly below the skyscraper. 2 guilds, and a terrifying construct of Anubis. Chen Zhao had already figured out the classification of Anubis constructs. Below was an Anubis construct that had undergone 9 fusion processes. The first team had fused with the Anubis construct. As they were about to destroy it, the second team appeared. The objective of the second team was very clear. They wanted to snatch the Anubis construct's demon orb. However, the result was beyond the two teams' expectations. The strength of this Anubis construct, which had been fused 9 times, was beyond their imagination. In the beginning, the two teams had been fighting against each other, completely disregarding the construct of Anubis. When Anubis construct entered the battlefield, it killed 3 people on the spot and heavily injured 2 others. Only then did the two teams realize that they had made a mistake. As a result, the two teams had no choice but to join forces to fight against the Anubis construct in order to preserve their lives. Chen Zhao watched the battle in the square excitedly. Bifla suddenly shifted his gaze and gazed into the distance. What happened? There's also an interesting battle over there, Bifla said as he pointed to the left. Oh, how so? There are 2 very powerful teams fighting intensely, Bifla said. I can recognize one of them. It should be a team from the church. The leader is Chief Consul Matthew, who's also John's favorite student. The other team is unfamiliar. I can't tell where they're from, but they're also very powerful. Huh. The battle seems to have ended, Bifla muttered to himself. Bifla, how did you know about the battle that's happening so far away? Don't tell me it's because of the battle aura or waves. My senses are definitely stronger than yours. If I can't feel it, how did you? That's why I said you're still too young. The years I've experienced have made me wiser and more knowledgeable. You'll never be able to catch up to me in this regard. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Are you trying to take advantage of your seniority? I'll go over and take a look, Bifla said. Didn't you say the battle was over? What's there to see? When I first sensed it, the battle was still very intense, but it ended in an instant. This is very strange. Maybe something happened outside of my perception. Matthew is His Holiness John's student. If something happened to him, and he didn't help, he would be blamed by His Holiness John. Fine, go. Saving people isn't my forte, so I won't cause trouble. Chen Zhao clearly wasn't interested in saving people, especially when they were strangers. Chen Zhao really didn't know John well. Even if they met again, they would at most nod and greet each other. Bifla quickly flew into the air and disappeared into the gray air. Chen Zhao lifted his head and looked at the sky. The battle below was still intense. It could even be described as exciting. However, Chen Zhao's attention had shifted. How did Bifla know what was happening in the distance? Normally, the range of a small world should be the limit of one's senses, right? Bifla wasn't even in the Shangqing state. He didn't have a small world, but all the signs showed that. His perception range was even wider than Chen Zhao's pocket world. This was what Chen Zhao couldn't understand. It could even be said to be unacceptable. How exactly did Bifla do it? A spiritualist's senses were usually divided into 2 types. One was when the other party transmitted information, such as aura or pressure. The further the distance, the harder it was to transmit. It was like sound. To transmit further, one had to be louder. Aura and pressure were the same as sound. They would spread with distance, and then disappear completely. The other method was to use his own power to spread out and receive information within a certain range, just like what Chen Zhao was doing. It was like a radar. Chen Zhao felt that his and Bifla's senses weren't that much different. His senses might even be sharper. Bifla could sense what was happening further away. It was very likely that he was using some kind of information receiving spell. But for now, Chen Zhao couldn't figure out what Bifla's special spell was. Chapter 2181. On the battlefield, the 3 teams were taking a break. The people from the Grey Society panted heavily, using the time to recover their mana. The Alps Alliance didn't have it easy either. They'd used up a lot of stamina and mana in the battle. They'd also lost 2 people and 2 were heavily injured. This caused their team to almost collapse. The Anubis construct before them was simply too powerful. Previously, they had successfully fused and killed 2 Anubis constructs that had fused 8 times. The entire process had been quite easy. They'd thought that they could deal with an Anubis construct with their power. But the result was out of their expectations. The Anubis construct they'd fused was far beyond their expectations. Coupled with the Grey Society's sneak attack, their team was thrown into chaos. In the end, the Anubis construct, who'd been the prey, succeeded. It killed 2 of them, and heavily injured 2 others. Of course, the Grey Society didn't have it easy either. One was dead and one was injured. The leader of the Alps Alliance, Felto, looked around with a frown. Odai, do you feel anything strange? Felto asked in a low voice. Captain, do you also feel a very uncomfortable feeling? Odai asked. You felt it too? Yes, Odai said. I felt it not long after we clashed with the Grey Society. Do you know where the person spying on us is hiding? At the top of the building. Don't look up and don't attract his attention. Just pretend you don't know, Odai reminded in a low voice. Is it someone from the Grey Society hiding in the dark? No, the Grey Society doesn't know who it is. Plus, there were 10 of them when they appeared. How could there be another hidden person? That's why I think it's most likely to be a third team, or a random participant. Then should we do something? Not yet. We don't know their goal or background. After a brief moment of regrouping, the Anubis construct cast a covetous gaze at the 2 guilds once more. Chen Zhao sat on the edge of the rooftop. The building was about 100 meters tall. Therefore, without good eyesight, one would not be able to see Chen Zhao in this gray space. He could hear everyone's conversation below, including Odai and Felto's. Of course, Odai was able to discover him. It was mainly because Chen Zhao didn't hide it on purpose. Another reason was that Chen Zhao wasn't good at hiding, unless Chen Zhao hid in a corner. However, Chen Zhao had his own status, so he definitely wouldn't do something like that. Suddenly, Chen Zhao's attention shifted away from the battle below. Not far away, Chen Zhao saw a figure jumping between the roofs of a relatively short building. A lone wolf? Chen Zhao looked at the figure. The person also noticed Chen Zhao's gaze. He couldn't help but stop and look up at Chen Zhao. Huluz grinded his sharp teeth and leaped dozens of meters before landing on the plaza. At this moment, everyone in the square was stunned. What was going on? Who was this person? It was furry and looked like a beast druid. Or was it some sort of beast hybrid? Of course, it was also possible that he had borrowed the divine power of some god of the wilderness. Huluz was not a person who was good with words and communication. What he was better at was fighting. However, he wasn't the one who took the initiative this time. It was the construct of Anubis. The Anubis construct clearly didn't like Huluz's sudden visit. The Anubis construct opened its mouth and spat out a stream of black flames at Huluz. Huluz raised his right arm and swiped down with his claws. Hiss! In an instant, the black flames were directly smashed apart by Huluz's claws, turning into 5 tiny black torrents. Huluz's claws sliced through the air, and the Anubis construct's head was split open. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Instant kill. The orc used his claw to kill the Anubis construct? Huluz strolled to the corpse of the Anubis construct and picked up the colorful demonic bead. Hee, the second spoil of the day. Huluz started rubbing his fingers again. He glanced at the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance around him. He couldn't resist the urge to tear them apart. However, his rationality told him that killing here would likely be exposed. By then, he would either be expelled or hunted down. This wasn't what he wanted. However, the beast in his heart kept urging him to go crazy. He really wanted to kill. He really wanted to crush all these ants. Huluz suddenly revealed a cruel smile. Hand over your spoils of war, all of them, Huluz said in an arrogant tone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were all on guard. Hand them over. Huluz suddenly raised his voice. At the same time, a terrifying pressure exploded from his body. One of the witches was frightened by Huluz and directly shot a spell at him. A cruel smile appeared on Huluz's face. He suddenly pounced at the witch. Ah! The scream only lasted for a short period of time. The witch had already been torn beyond recognition by Huluz. Chen Zhao, who was sitting at the edge of the balcony, raised an eyebrow. He didn't think that the beast would kill people. Only a visitor like him had the right to retaliate. Only when a visitor was attacked maliciously in the Wasteland Bazaar could he retaliate and kill people. The participants of the Battle of Holy Glory weren't allowed to kill each other. This meant that the beast was also one of the visitors. However, the beast's act of killing the witch just now was actually against the rules, if one were to look into it. Because the witch's attack was actually a passive counterattack. The beast was trying to scare her. However, Hulu's emitted a thick murderous intent. Chun Zhao could tell that this was a mad dog dominated by bestiality. Chun Zhao suddenly left the edge of the balcony and fell from the sky. Boom! Everyone turned to look at Chun Zhao. Otter and Fielto both raised an eyebrow. This guy and the beast were together? Were they planning to kill both of their teams now? Chun Zhao walked out of the hole he'd just made. However, when Chun Zhao saw a tooth hanging from Hulu's neck, his face twitched. Your tooth seems to be a dragon's tooth. It's even bloody. Can you tell me where it came from? The dragon clan had a pair of upper canine teeth in their lower jaw. This pair of canine teeth was equivalent to the dragon clan's fingerprint. Every dragon clan's upper canine teeth were different. Chapter 2182. There weren't many dragon teeth that Chun Zhao could remember. One was Abito's, a child of his family. The other was Gaia's dragon tooth. Be it Abito's or Gaia, they were both young dragons. Even though Gaia was already an adult in human terms. But in dragon form she was still a child. Hulu's pulled off the chain with the dragon tooth hanging on it. You mean this? My spoils of war just now were obtained by killing a dragon. Hulu's face was filled with arrogance. Of course, he said this to increase his deterrence. Hunting and slaying dragons was a very shocking thing to anyone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were clearly frightened by Hulu's. Slaying a dragon? That was a legend. Then Dragon Slayer, show me what you've got. Chun Zhao hooked his finger. What? You can't wait to challenge me? Hulu's looked at Chun Zhao in disdain. Defeating a Dragon Slayer should be a glorious thing. There was a hint of coldness in Chun Zhao's smile. Be careful. Otherwise you'll really die. Captain, is it just my imagination? That Asian seems like he wants to kill someone. It's not your imagination, Felto whispered. He really wants to kill someone. That Asian doesn't know what a dragon is, right? That savage is a dragon slayer. That guy seems to be using the power of the god of the Baron. What's the god of the Baron? There are many faiths in this world. For example, Druids believe in the god of the Baron born from nature. The god of the Baron is a god even older than the god of the Baron. Basically, it's the god of the Baron from the old generation. Since they're all gods of the wilderness, why are they called the gods of the wilderness? Because the barbarian gods are gods abandoned by the rules and nature, and the barbarian gods originate from nature. Their power also comes from nature. Being abandoned by nature also means that they will wither like a flower that has lost the sun. However, these old gods are not willing to disappear just like that. So they also found a way to continue, and that is to spread their faith to the demons. As a result, they changed from the gods of nature to the gods of demons. The demons' faith is full of the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst, which also led to the barbarian gods giving back the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst. This kind of power is nothing to the demons, but for humans it is too cruel. At this moment, Hulu's turned his head to look at Odai and Felto. You seem to understand my power very well. Hulu's tone seemed calm, but there was a trace of killing intent in it. He didn't like people talking about the source of his power. Of course, the main reason was that he didn't like people discovering his weakness from the source of his power. Looks like I have to get rid of you in advance. The murderous aura around Hulu's grew stronger. Hulu's, who'd wanted to attack the two teams, suddenly exploded instinctively. I told you that you should focus on me, Chun Zhao said casually. Otherwise you'll probably die. Roar. Hulu's had always been the first to attack. Without any warning, Hulu's swung his claws at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao raised his right hand and gently pinched Hulu's claws. Crack. Ah! Hulu's cried out in pain. His 5 fingers had been crushed by Chun Zhao. He couldn't pull them back. Hulu's decisively used his right claw to tear off his left arm. Chun Zhao looked at the thick arm in his hand. He casually tossed the arm to the side. You didn't show your dragon-slaying abilities. Hulus, the people from the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Hulus was undoubtedly very powerful. However, the Asian on the other side gained the advantage in an instant. Hulus took a few steps back and looked at his broken arm. You don't think you can win like this, right? The flesh on Hulus's broken arm wriggled. Soon a new arm stretched out. Chen Zhao nodded. Not bad. Looks like I can take a few more hits. Do you want to see more power? Hulus smiled arrogantly, the mane on his body growing crazily. His body arched forward slightly, and a pair of demon horns grew out of his forehead. The aura on his body gave everyone a feeling of evil. Very evil. Hulus looked like a real demon. Of course, from Chen Zhao's point of view, although Hulus gave off a thick demonic aura, he didn't look like a demon. But he wasn't a demon. Chen Zhao knew demons too well. He also knew their power. Not everyone was suitable to use demon power. Demon power wasn't actually good or evil. It was just that demon power was extremely stimulating. It was like how some people could accept the taste of chili, while others couldn't. Demon power was like chili, but most people in the world were allergic to chili. Only a few people could accept demon power. But their bodies would still change to different degrees. Just like Hulus before him. Actually, Chen Zhao and Hulus were similar. They were both beneficiaries of demon power. Of course, he could also be called a victim. Chen Zhao himself had many demon bloodlines. His body had also been modified by demon bloodlines. But there was still a qualitative difference between Chen Zhao and Hulus. Chen Zhao could control the demon's power. Hulus stomped and a spiderweb appeared on the concrete floor. Hulus' sharp claws attacked Chen Zhao again. Bang! Hulus didn't even see Chen Zhao's attack clearly. He felt the bones in his chest shatter completely. His body flew out like a kite with a broken string. The 3 or 4 buildings behind him were smashed into ruins. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this really a battle between humans? Why did it feel like 2 human-shaped monsters were fighting each other? Hulus stood up again. He grabbed a piece of reinforced concrete that weighed hundreds of kilograms and threw it at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao blocked the piece of concrete with only one hand. But just then Hulus' real attack came. The moment Chen Zhao's vision was blocked by the reinforced concrete, Hulus' claws swiped at Chen Zhao from behind. But then, the reinforced concrete in front of Chen Zhao shot back and smashed into Hulus. A few rebars stabbed into Hulus' body, pinning him to a wall. Chapter 2183. Hulus roared and pulled out the steel bars from his body. Hulus didn't become weak because of his injuries. Instead, the pain and blood made him even more ferocious. Roar! Hulus roared. He took a step forward and pounced at Chen Zhao with even greater speed and power. This time Chen Zhao didn't move. He allowed Hulus' claws to land on him. Hulus' claws slashed across Chen Zhao's skin, creating countless sparks. You need to use more strength. Chen Zhao looked at Hulus emotionlessly. Hulus roared again and swung another claw at Chen Zhao's head. However, even after shattering the bones in his arm, he still couldn't hurt Chen Zhao at all. Hulus was shocked. What was wrong with this guy? By now, Chen Zhao had already raised his right palm and pushed Hulus' chest lightly. Hulus flew out uncontrollably. Hulus stood up again and attacked again. He was sent flying again. 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 This went on for more than 10 times. Chen Zhao's feet finally moved. He strolled toward Hulus. Hulus had monster-level recovery abilities. But this didn't mean that he was immortal. After being heavily injured several times, his energy was starting to weaken. You're much weaker than I imagined. Chen Zhao looked at Hulus calmly. You can't kill me. Hulus looked at Chen Zhao panting. You can't kill people here. If you kill me, you'll be in even more trouble. I can't kill participants of the Battle of Holy Glory, but you're not a participant. Looking at Hulus, Chen Zhao said, plus you broke the rules. You provoked the participants, and even approached them. So it's reasonable for me to kill you. Chen Zhao reached out and pressed down on Hulus. Originally, Chen Zhao wanted to kill him. But in the next instant, Hulus disappeared. But his aura was still there. Chen Zhao turned around and saw someone carrying Hulus. The person had a mustache and was dressed in colorful clothes. There were 7 other people beside him. Marfa tossed Hulu's onto the ground. I was wondering why you didn't come back for so long. Marfa glanced at Hulu's on the ground. Fortunately, we came back to take a look. Otherwise, you would have died here today. This guy is very powerful, no, very powerful. Hura stood up again with the help of his companion's quick healing. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at Marfa and the others. Including Hulu's, there were 9 people in total. Are you with him? Sir, how should I address you? Marfa looked at him gently. At the same time, he muttered to himself. To be able to beat Hulu's up like this, his strength is definitely not ordinary. But no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't figure out Chen Zhao's background. China? Dongying? Spiritualists from these 2 places were the most likely suspects. The possibility of it being Huaxiao was higher. However, he had more or less recorded the outstanding younger generation of the prestigious families in Huaxiao on his list. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find anyone that matched the person in front of him. I'll tell you if I win, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Marfa, let me teach him a lesson. What an arrogant little fellow. Marfa was also amused by his words. Sir, do you know what you're saying? Of course. Chen Zhao nodded with a smile. You're all going to die here today. Are you kidding? That must be it. Ha, you're so funny. Marfa chuckled. No, I'm serious. Look at my expression. Am I serious? Maybe you don't know who I and my subordinates are, so it's not your fault. But your ignorance will bring you disaster. Suddenly, a murderous glint appeared in Marfa's eyes. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt his body being pulled by an invisible force. However, the force wasn't very strong. At least, it wasn't strong enough to shake Chen Zhao. Surprise flashed in Marfa's eyes. His displacement spell didn't work on the person before him? Has it started? Chen Zhao looked around. He couldn't tell who had done it. He didn't even know what the spell was used for. It shouldn't be weak. However, most of the power was weakened by his non-elemental body. Then, the effect on him was minimal. Looks like your magic resistance is very high, Marfa said calmly. Although Chen Zhao had dispelled his best move, Marfa didn't think much of it. The displacement spell wasn't all he had. It wasn't his trump card either. He had too many spells to counter his enemies. Maybe I should be more serious. Marfa lifted his right arm. He wore a string of colorful gems on his right wrist. The string of jewels began to shine brilliantly. Gravity 1,000 times, Marfa yelled. Terrifying magic power was released from his body. Whoosh! Everyone could feel the terrifying magic power from Marfa. It attacked everyone's soul like a tsunami. The members of the Grey Society, an Alps alliance, paled in fear. The mustached man was scarier than the beast-like spiritualist. They could all see how terrifying it was. Just the amount of mana that he released was 10 times more than the combined mana of the 2 teams. They couldn't imagine how terrifying it would be if he went all out. In an instant, the ground around Chen Zhao shattered. However, Chen Zhao was still standing there unharmed. Marfa's expression became even more astonished. Gravity spells couldn't be nullified or counteracted by magic resistance. Gravity spells were actually physical attacks. So no matter how high one's magic resistance was, they couldn't be nullified. However, the Asian before them didn't seem to be affected at all. Perhaps it wasn't completely unaffected. He might not be able to move now. Huaimi, use your strongest power to destroy him, Marfa said. Chen Zhao saw a beautiful woman walk in front of him. Electricity flashed on the woman called Huaimi. Goodbye. A strong electric current crackled in the air. Everyone could smell something burning. It was caused by the interaction between electricity and air. The terrifying high-voltage electricity turned into a flood and engulfed Chen Zhao. The torrent did not stop flowing and continued to move forward. It seemed like it was going to destroy everything. That was indeed the case. The terrifying electric current destroyed all obstacles along the way, leaving not even a speck of dust. Huaimi clapped her hands. She was always confident in her attacks. Nothing could be preserved in this torrent of lightning. Everything would be evaporated in the flood. Except for her target. Not a bad attack. Chen Zhao stood there unscathed, apart from his slightly burnt clothes. Chapter 2184. It's too early for you to say goodbye. Huai Mi's pupils constricted. She saw Chen Zhao raise his right arm. Then she saw a familiar scene. The only difference was that in the past, she'd stood in his position and used her lightning torrent to destroy others. And this time, she was the one being attacked. Watch out! Suddenly, an old man appeared before Huai Mi. After the dazzling light, the old man's magic shield shattered. Thankfully, the torrent disappeared too. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Union were numb from fear. The battle between the two sides had scared them silly. They'd once thought that they were the top spiritualists in the spiritual world. But now they realized how foolish and ignorant they were in the past. Compared to the people before them, they were as young as babies. Were they going to fight against monsters of this level in the Battle of the Holy Light? Was this a joke? Any one of these people could wipe out their entire team. Chen Zhao rubbed his palms. Please don't try to defeat me in my area of expertise. You'd better give me some new tricks. Once I lose interest, I won't be able to resist killing you. Suddenly, Chen Zhao turned around and grabbed a person's head. The person was about to sneak attack Chen Zhao. No one knew how he'd appeared behind Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao knew and seized the opportunity. For example, this type. It's really boring. Crack. Chen Zhao crushed the person's head. Marfa and his men's expressions changed. One of their friends was killed just like that? Chen Zhao shook the flesh off his hand. Marfa's expression grew colder. He couldn't be as calm and at ease as before. Go all out. Don't hold back, Marfa ordered. Everyone moved in an instant, including Huluz, who'd just been cured. Huluz turned into a ferocious beast and pounced at Chen Zhao. Gravity. 10,000 times. Huluz's weight suddenly increased by 10,000 times, but he couldn't bear the force himself. Huluz pressed down on Chen Zhao with an overwhelming force. Chen Zhao reached out and blocked Huluz's attack. But this time he didn't push Huluz away. Huluz couldn't move his body either. Although Marfa's gravity spell wasn't targeted at him, but it was actually taking effect on him. That was why Huluz felt like he had been filled with cement. Flame prison. The old man who'd blocked Chen Zhao's lightning counterattack cast a spell at him. Chen Zhao was immediately engulfed in flames. However, the next moment, the flames were sucked into Chen Zhao's mouth. After brewing it in his mouth, he sprayed it at the old man with an even more intense and scorching impact. Bang! After the violent explosion, there was nothing left of the old man. I've said it before. Give me something fresh, or it'll be the day you die. At this moment, Marfa finally realized. The man in front of him was not ignorant. He just didn't want to know about them. If he and his subordinates still held the same arrogant and contemptuous attitude as before, it was very likely that he would be killed by this man. At this moment, a witch on Marfa's left pressed her palms against the ground. Alec Chui Xin, show yourselves. At this moment, two huge magic arrays appeared in front of the witch. Two colossal dragons emerged from the two magic arrays. One was a black dragon, and the other was a purple dragon. But when Chen Zhao saw the purple dragon, he was stunned. He felt that he'd seen this purple dragon somewhere before. But the moment the purple dragon saw Chen Zhao, the scales on its neck stood up. Cancel my summon, hurry up and cancel my summon. Damn idiot. Chui Xin roared crazily. Crazy. She was really going crazy. Was the world so small? How did she end up in front of this human after so many twists and turns? The other black dragon called Alec didn't think much of it. Chui Xin, you're my summoned beast now. You better listen to my orders. Hurry up and kill this guy. Kill him. You idiots. This guy killed a dozen dragons, including 2 father dragons. If you want to be enemies with him, don't drag me to death. Chui Xin was about to break down. Everyone was shocked by Chui Xin's words. Killed a dozen dragons? Everyone looked at Chen Zhao differently. Ah, I remember now. You're the dragon that escaped. Chen Zhao grinned. I'm so lucky. I didn't think we'd meet again. This time we can finally settle our scores. Human, I don't want to be enemies with you, and I have no intention of doing so. Plus, I'm a guardian of the Celestial Master sect now. You can't kill me. Are you kidding? You're a guardian of the Celestial Master sect? I'm not lying. I'm a guardian of the Celestial Master sect. Fine, for old Zhang's sake, Chen Zhao said calmly. Piss off. He still had to give Zhang Tianyi face. At least, he didn't plan on falling out with Zhang Tianyi. But the other black dragon wasn't so lucky. At least his background wasn't big enough. I've killed a black dragon. You're the second one. Alec also grew nervous. He'd laughed at Cui Xian's cowardice. But after hearing Cui Xian's words, he found it ridiculous. Now that Chen Zhao was staring at him, he felt his hair stand on end. Human, do you think I'm scared of you? You should be. Chen Zhao moved. In an instant he appeared above Alec's head. Alec couldn't even find Chen Zhao. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his head and lost consciousness. Chen Zhao smashed Alec's head heavily. The huge black dragon's head smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. Everyone was silent. What had just happened? Did that guy kill a black dragon in an instant? At that moment, Marfa's group, the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance were all shocked. Retreat. Scatter and run. Marfa made a prompt decision. Even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to fight against such a guy. It was better to run as soon as possible. Right now, Marfa didn't think that they had a chance of winning. Running was the wisest choice. Leaving one's back to the enemy on the battlefield was the stupidest choice. Facing an undefeatable enemy, fighting to the end was the stupidest choice. Cui Xian wasn't in a good state. She knew how terrifying Chen Zhao was. Chapter 2185. But when Marfa wanted to escape, it was too late. A black screen rose within a radius of several thousand meters. The dark lava completely covered the area. Everyone felt like their heads were going to explode. No one can escape. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Marfa and the others. They didn't have any intention to fight at all. The difference in power between them and Chen Zhao was too obvious. There was no suspense in the battle, even though they knew that they would all die if they didn't fight. But knowing it was one thing, and doing it was another thing. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao solemnly. Indecision was written all over their faces. Fight, or not fight. At this moment, the people outside the dark lava also saw the black screen. What's happening there? I don't know, but I know it's dangerous. So it's better if we don't go over. It's the president. Jalanash exclaimed. The others saw the black screen too. He's here too. Gaia asked, confused. I wonder who the president's opponent is. I'm afraid it's that person. Maybe that group of people. West's expression was complicated. He felt like he'd gotten his revenge. But on the other hand, he also felt that it was a pity. That person was undoubtedly very powerful. He'd brought great humiliation to them. But on the other hand, he'd also given them great motivation. There were pros and cons to this encounter. But now, if that person met Chen Zhao, he probably wouldn't be able to wait for the day they could take revenge. Hulu's was indeed very powerful. However, Hulu's was far from reaching the level of a monster in their hearts. In their minds, there was only one person who was a monster. That was their president, Chen Zhao. They knew Chen Zhao too well. Similarly, they didn't know where Chen Zhao's limit was. It was just like the huge black screen in the distance. How much magic power did he need to maintain such a terrifying screen? Almost everyone in Desolate Town could see the black screen, but not many dared to approach it. After all, it was too scary. When Marfa and the others went all out, only then did they truly realize how big the gap between them and Chen Zhao was. They could have fought back and forth a few times. But when they became serious, Chen Zhao also became serious. Every time they attacked, they would be met with a counterattack that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Looks like you don't have any new tricks. Chen Zhao's tone was filled with disappointment. Marfa and the others had never been humiliated like this. In the past, they were all looked up to by others. But now, they were like children being pressed against the ground by a strong man. Cui Xian suddenly felt lucky, although she was also an enemy this time. But he didn't have to face Chen Zhao. He was really too lucky, even if she was summoned by his enemy. However, this summoning was not mandatory. After all, the other party did not have the strength to force her to obey his orders. In fact, this kind of summoning was even a request and acceptance. It was an equal contract. Therefore, no one owed anyone anything. So now she could be a bystander. Of course, What was even more fortunate was that she had a powerful backer, the Celestial Master sect of Mount Longhu. Without the protection of Longhu Mountain's Celestial Master sect, Chen Zhao probably wouldn't care which side she was on. It was likely that they would directly settle the old and new grudges between them. Then you can all die. Instantly, Marfa and the others felt Chen Zhao's murderous intent. Everyone couldn't help but use their strongest defensive spells. Even the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance used their defensive spells at the same time. The murderous intent was released indiscriminately. The first to die was the spiritualist who had summoned Cui Xiyin. She was killed by Chen Zhao. Even though she used a defensive spell, it was still useless. The second, it was the spiritualist who had the power of lightning. In the same instant, they couldn't resist at all. Chen Zhao made them feel like they were suffocating. This was a disaster, a nightmare. The third, the fourth, the sixth, only Marfa and Huluz were left. The entire process took less than 5 seconds. All the negative emotions surged into their hearts. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. It was as if they were worried that Chen Zhao would notice them. Why? Why do you want to kill us? We don't even know you. Huluz roared. His voice was hoarse as if he was begging. You don't know me? Unfortunately, the dragon tooth on your neck belongs to my friends, and you killed them. Chen Zhao smiled at Huluz. That's right, Huluz said. They're not dead. I didn't kill them. Huluz said hurriedly. None of them died. I see. Chen Zhao suddenly retracted his murderous intent. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. Huluz and Marfa were so nervous that they broke out in cold sweat. Suddenly, Chen Zhao lifted his head. I still want to kill you. As he spoke, Huluz felt an overwhelming pressure assaulting him. Ah! Huluz could only cry out in pain. Chen Zhao's fist smashed into his body with unstoppable force. Huluz's body felt like it was being bombarded by a large caliber cannon. He turned into minced meat and flew out. Marfa's pupils constricted. It's here. Chen Zhao was already closing in on him. Marfa felt that his thoughts had completely frozen. He couldn't react at all. It was a pressure that surpassed his body and mind. Suddenly, a beam of light broke through the cover formed by the dark lava and shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked up and took 2 steps back. The beam of light landed on the ground before him. Then a figure stood before Chen Zhao and Marfa. Zhang Tianyi. Surprised, Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, you better give me an explanation. When the others saw Zhang Tianyi, their expressions changed. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance almost knelt on the ground. Marfa was panting like a bull. He almost thought that he was going to die. But who would have thought that the person who was the least likely to save him in the world would actually save him? Don't tell me he's your man too. No, Zhang Tianyi said. Actually, I don't know him at all, but he's still useful. Old Zhang, you're making things difficult for me. Chen Zhao's expression was troubled. Just because he's still useful, you took my enemy away from me? Isn't that too casual? I'll arrange a project for you later, Zhang Tianyi said. It's useless for me to know the project in advance. I still like my subordinates to fight fairly with the experts instead of playing tricks. Chen Zhao's expression was stern and righteous. Chapter 2186. Zhang Tianyi put his hands behind his back and smiled. He really can't die. Name your condition. As long as it's reasonable, I'll try my best to satisfy you. Haha, when you said those words, you were already very insincere. Chen Zhao scratched his nose and pointed at Cui Xiyin. I've already let her go. Are you going to steal another prey from me? I don't want to, but he's really important. I need to get some information from him. Zhang Tianyi said helplessly. How about this, you choose between her and him. No matter how stupid the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were, they could tell. Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi were clearly on the same level. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken in such a tone. It was said that there were some old monsters in Huaxia that had the ability to rejuvenate. Perhaps the young man in front of him was an old monster in disguise. Cui Xiyin was devastated. She had thought that she had escaped death. He didn't expect it to be used as a bargaining chip to threaten Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi might be able to stop him. But he couldn't protect two people in front of Chen Zhao. Protect Trish, or protect Marfa. Zhang Tianyi sighed. Marfa was indeed very important. But it wasn't important enough for him to abandon his own people. It was just as Chen Zhao had threatened. He could not protect both Trish and Marfa at the same time. Of course he understood Chen Zhao. When Chen Zhao said that he would choose him, it meant that he could back off. When a person really wanted to kill the other party, no one could stop him. Zhang Tianyi didn't think he could stop Chen Zhao. If Zhang Tianyi wanted to kill someone close to Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to stop him either. They almost didn't need to do anything. They just had to let go of their hands and feet and fight. The aftermath of the battle could kill the people around them. Come to Dragon Tiger Mountain when you're free. I have a lot of good stuff there. Zhang Tianyi smiled at him. In his heart he said, Brat, that's enough. I've already taken such a step back. You brat know when to stop. However, Zhang Tianyi's answer was still not enough to satisfy him. This kind of empty promise is meaningless. Chen Zhao didn't believe Zhang Tianyi's promise. Or rather, they didn't believe in Zhang Tianyi's credibility. Does this old man have credibility? What's more, he was now threatening him for benefits. If he really went to Mount Longhu to get his reward, he wouldn't be able to do so. It might be sending a lamb into the tiger's mouth. Don't talk about morality. Zhang Tianyi was a shrewd old man. His morality was self-interest first, followed by moral bottom line. Just say it. What do you want? Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. That depends on how sincere you are. Marfa was furious that he was being used as a bargaining chip. However, there was more helplessness and fear. In this negotiation, he did not even have the right to choose. He didn't even have the right to speak. Zhang Tianyi rummaged in his pocket. He took out a scroll and tossed it to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao took a look. Grand Emperor of Heaven's True Scripture of Taoist Techniques. Just the name alone was quite intimidating. However, he didn't even know if it would be useful to him. What's this? Chen Zhao tried to open it but couldn't. If he forcefully tore it open, he would only damage the scroll. What the hell? This is a Tao law that only the sect master of our Longhu Mountain Celestial Master sect can come into contact with. Be careful with your words. Zhang Tianyi said with a black face. How do I open it? Figure it out yourself. Don't tell me you can't even handle such a small matter? Zhang Tianyi said, looking at Chen Zhao with a playful gaze. He loved to see Chen Zhao embarrassed. In the end, he had no choice but to beg Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao tossed the scroll in the air. Do I have to figure it out myself? I just need to send out a message, and whoever opens it for me can make a copy. There's no limit to the number of times. I don't believe that no one can open it with so many spiritualists in the world. Zhang Tianyi kept glaring at Chen Zhao. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to be so shameless. He already regretted giving him such an important heavenly scripture of Taoist techniques. At first, Zhang Tianyi thought that even if Chen Zhao took the Taoist technique of Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Sect, he would at most comprehend the profound realms within, and not learn the spells inside. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to trick him directly. I'll remove the seal on it later. Zhang Tianyi was so angry that his nose was crooked, but he could only pinch his nose and accept it. The item was in Chen Zhao's hands, and he was the one who gave it away. It was almost impossible for him to take it back. Fine, I'll leave him to you. Chen Zhao let Marfa go easily, but before he left he added, Oh, after you ask what you need to ask, you can give him back to me. How about that? Zhang Tianyi's face darkened. Chen Zhao was tricking him. Hearing that, Marfa found it even harder to speak. He was going to die either way. How could Marfa be willing to speak? Piss off. Chen Zhao turned around and left grinning. But he stopped before the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance. You didn't see anything today. Nothing happened. Do you understand? If I hear anything about what happened today, I'll throw your friends, families, and organizations into the Pacific Ocean to feed the dogs. The people from the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance paled in fear. Are there dogs in the Pacific Ocean? Zhang Tianyi asked. Fur seals. Can't I? Chen Zhao touched the black cover. Not long after, Bifla appeared beside Chen Zhao. I thought you'd fight with Celestial Master Zhang. Bifla's tone was rather disappointed. He didn't hide his thoughts at all. He knew Chen Zhao's abilities. Chen Zhao had a realm that he couldn't reach in 400 years. It was also Zhang Tianyi's realm. He really wanted to learn something from Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi's battle. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi didn't have a reason to fight. Of course, it might also be because they were wary of each other. How about we fight? Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla. I'm not stupid. There's at least a realm difference between us. You're already undefeatable in this battle. But your strange and miraculous magic is something I can't hope to achieve. Those spells can stall for time, but they can't win. Bifla had a clear understanding of himself. He might be proud and arrogant, but he wasn't arrogant. He wouldn't blindly think that he was undefeatable. When did you come? Probably when you went downstairs, Bifla said. Do you know who those people are? Yes, Bifla answered. Who are they? Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2187. They're generally bad people, Bifla said calmly. They've done all the bad things you can think of. Most of the time, no matter what kind of evil it was, it could be summarized as a bad person. Chen Zhao and Bifla continued to stroll around the desolate market. They would stay and watch the battles. The first trial lasted for 24 hours before it finally ended. During this time, Chen Zhao saw the association's team. But Chen Zhao didn't show himself. After confirming that they were fine, Chen Zhao left the vicinity of the association's team. When Chen Zhao and Bifla left the desolate market, the first stage had officially ended. It felt great to be back in the modern world. That was how Chen Zhao felt. Bifla didn't show it. But he had the same feeling. Maybe it was a different space like the real world. But that gray and gloomy environment, that kind of emptiness and silence brought great pressure to people. Chen Zhao didn't like that feeling. No normal person would. The familiar sunlight, air and passers-by. This was what normal people liked. Let's go get a drink, Chen Zhao said. Oh, doesn't the fire worship sect abstain from alcohol? No. Chen Zhao and Bifla found a roadside pub. There are many such roadside pubs in Turkey. Many Turks like to sit in these roadside pubs and drink beer in the afternoon. Chen Zhao and Bifla both enjoyed the afternoon. Just then, a familiar figure entered Chen Zhao's field of vision. Li Xian. Of course, Chen Zhao only knew her online username, Little Xinshin. Li Xian was broadcasting on the streets of Istanbul. Li Xian talked non-stop. Suddenly, her phone on the selfie stick beeped with a message. While broadcasting, Li Xian looked at the messages from the corner of her eye. These messages were all private messages sent to her by her fans. At the same time, she also saw the comments in the live stream. The live stream was filled with "Look at the asterisk shoal." Look at the asterisk shoal? What was this? Li Xian was confused. She didn't know what was going on. Chen Zhao also didn't know that he'd become popular in Li Xian's live stream. Basically, the viewers who watched Li Xian's live stream for a long time all knew who Chen Zhao was. Some people even suspected that Li Xian had hired someone. Li Xian suddenly saw Chen Zhao sitting at a table by the roadside. Li Xian was in a bad mood. Chen Zhao even waved enthusiastically at Li Xian to greet her. Chen Zhao smiled brightly. It was as if he had met a friend that he had not seen for a long time. However, Li Xian didn't look so happy. She and Chen Zhao were on the same flight to Istanbul. But she felt that her fate with Chen Zhao had basically come to an end. Especially at the airport, when she saw Chen Zhao and his men drag a group of people into the corridor and beat them up. She kept her distance from Chen Zhao, indicating that she couldn't afford to offend him. Chen Zhao was definitely not a good person. At least, he wasn't the kind that she knew. She even imagined that Chen Zhao was some big boss of a gang. Thus, she really didn't want to meet him again. Next to Chen Zhao was a man wearing Central Asian clothing. Li Xian couldn't help but imagine what kind of illegal transaction was going on. I can feel that the woman knows you. And her brain is working at high speed. And her body is over-secreting dopamine. There are only two possibilities for this situation. One is that she is extremely excited, and the other is that she is in a state of extreme panic. Bifla looked at Chen Zhao. What did you do to her? I won $500,000 from her, Chen Zhao said. Really? Bifla stared at Chen Zhao suspiciously. What do you think I can do to her? She's just a normal person. The rules of the spiritual world might not apply to you, Bifla said honestly. You've never been one to follow the rules. There had always been a rule in the spiritual world, not to harass normal people. But this rule only applied to regular spiritualists. It didn't apply to people like Chun Zhao and Bifla, whose status and power were already extraordinary. In ancient times, they could just find a slightly remote place. If they made up a doctrine, they could be worshipped as gods. Whether it was the rules of the spiritual world or the laws of the normal world, they were already very weak on them. For example, if a criminal stood before them, the laws of the normal world first talked about evidence. But they didn't need evidence. When they thought that the other was a criminal, they would punish the other in the way they thought was right. You sound like you know me very well. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. While Chun Zhao and Bifla were teasing each other, Li Xian had already walked over. Li Xian was helpless too, because of the requests from the bosses in the broadcast room. She came over to greet Chun Zhao. Hello, can I sit here? Li Xian asked in fluent English. Her tone was rather polite. Before Chun Zhao could reply, Bifla spoke first. Please sit. Mr. Chun, we meet again. You don't look very happy about our reunion, Chun Zhao said directly. Chun Zhao said directly. Kids in the live stream, are you still gritting your teeth at me? Do you really want to buy a plane ticket to Istanbul to beat me up? Unfortunately, I'll be staying in Istanbul for a long time. But you definitely won't have a chance to beat me. Plus, you definitely can't beat me. Under Chun Zhao's provocation, the comments in the broadcast room exploded. Seeing how you want to beat me to death, but can't do anything to me really makes me happy. Actually, most of the viewers in the broadcast room knew that Chun Zhao was rich. Basically, no one had anything better to do than to find Chun Zhao to practice martial arts. But in the broadcast room, no one would be serious with them anyway. Li Xian saw that the situation wasn't good. If Chun Zhao continued to cause trouble, the broadcast room would really be banned. There were rules from the higher-ups. Streamers weren't allowed to verbally attack or provoke the audience. Even if the streamer didn't do it on purpose, Chun Zhao's behavior was still not allowed in the broadcast room. Chun Zhao's various arrogant actions did bring some popularity to the broadcast room, but the side effects were also very obvious. Sir, how should I address you? Li Xian asked. Gunbi Bifla. Hello, Mr. Gunbi. Just then the broadcast room exploded again. Actually, the ones who exploded were the bosses in the broadcast room. Many of them knew Bifla, or rather the name, Gunbi Bifla, a super rich man in Central Asia. Chapter 2188. A super tycoon who didn't rely on oil to become one of the wealthiest people in Central Asia. Gunbi Bifla had only been known by the rich people in China since last year. Gunbi Bifla's Sun Group had collaborated with the richest company in China, Wanshur Group. They had invested more than $130 billion. They had collaborated on more than 50 projects. Of course, this news was quite sensational in the business world. But not many ordinary people knew about it. Therefore, Gunbi Bifla wasn't famous among ordinary people. But among the wealthy, Gunbi Bifla's reputation was rather high. No way. Is this guy really Gunbi Bifla? It can't be, right? It can't be a random actor, right? He's wearing the local costume and calls himself Gunbi Bifla. Is he really that super tycoon? Li Xian glanced at the comments in the live broadcast room. In fact, she didn't know how Gunbi Bifla could make the bosses in the live broadcast room explode. Just then, a huge tip floated across the live broadcast room. The person who had tipped Li Xian was none other than the boss of the live broadcast platform. Of course, he had another identity, the son of the richest man in China. He's the real Gunbi Bifla. I've seen him at my dad's party. This bullet screen was too eye-catching and eye-catching. Everyone in the live broadcast room saw it. Instantly, the live broadcast room exploded. All sorts of dirty comments floated across the room. If the two of them were actors, they were probably the most expensive actors in history. Most people with a clear mind understood. With Li Xian's status, it was impossible for her to hire Gunbi Bifla. Chun Zhao glanced at the comments. Bifla, you seem to be quite famous. If you spend a few $1 billion, you can be famous too. I can't do that. I don't have that much money. Chen Zhao's current net worth was only a little over $10 billion. Of course, the beer brand still had a lot of room for growth and profit. Denver, the person in charge of the brewery, would tell Chen Zhao about people who wanted to buy the brewery and beer brand every month when he did the financial report. Perhaps Dashen Beer's valuation wasn't as high as a first-tier company, but its profitability might not even be as high as a first-tier company. For example, those famous internet companies. For comparison, the world's largest search engine only made $1 billion in a quarter. Furthermore, Dashen Beer's quarterly profits had crushed this network technology company. Chen Zhao's net worth might not even be in Forbes' top 10, but that didn't mean they were richer than him. In terms of cash flow, even the richest person in the world might not be able to compare to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's money was rotting in the bank. Everyone knew that 99% of the world's currencies were depreciating, including the US dollar. But Chen Zhao really didn't understand finance. If a dabbler like Chen Zhao was allowed to invest in finance, that would not be a loss but a squandering. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to deposit the money in Citibank, and then sign a high-interest contract with them. In fact, almost every tycoon and bank had similar contracts. With $1 million, he could negotiate with the bank for a higher interest rate. Plus, he had a professional manager to help him invest. Of course, those investments were the most reliable fund investments. Their profitability was only slightly higher than the bank's interest. Li Xian looked at the bullet screen in the live broadcast room and roughly understood. The man in the traditional clothes of Central Asia was not a terrifying tycoon. Instead, he was a true super-rich man. I heard this guy won $500,000 from you? Baifla asked, pointing at Chen Zhao. Li Xian's face darkened. He really touched her sore spot. This was a dark history that she didn't want to mention. To her, it was definitely not a small amount. Moreover, the RMB had been changed to dollars. How about we play a game? If you can win, I'll give you $1 million, Baifla said, smiling. Game? What game? Instinctively, Li Xian wanted to reject. Her first reaction was that this super-rich man wouldn't make an outrageous request in front of millions of viewers. Would he? Smiling, Baifla took out a credit card and placed it on the table. Then he pushed it to Li Xian. Mr. Gunbai, I don't understand. What does this mean? This credit card is anonymous and has no password. You can swipe it however you want. If you can swipe the card's overdraft limit, and it doesn't exceed $1,000, then you win. I'll give you $1 million. Li Xian didn't take the credit card. Instead, she looked up and asked, I don't understand. What's the point of this competition? Also, I don't think I have any chance of winning. Actually, it's not that you have no chance of winning. You have a huge fan base, so you can ask them for advice. This card isn't a rare type of card. You can determine the card's limit and upper limit based on the type of card. It might seem like I'm asking you to squander your money, but in fact this competition still requires some skill. Baifla added, I only have one rule, and that is you can't check the upper limit of this card. As for the other methods that you and your fans can think of, you can try them. Mr. Gunbai, I still don't understand why you're doing this. You can think of it as the bad taste of rich people. Baifla glanced at Chen Zhao beside him. Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. That's your bad taste. I'm not. In my eyes, you're not rich either. Baifla's words ignited Chen Zhao's anger. You have more assets. Do you dare to compete with cash? The live stream was filled with joy. On one hand, Chen Zhao had lost. On the other hand, they were jeering. Haha, you dare to compete with the richest people in Central Asia? You've got guts. In this era, cash is the most worthless thing, Baifla said. Baifla said, only substantial assets or stocks can truly represent your net worth. So you admit defeat? Chen Zhao asked mockingly. Baifla had never been a broad-minded person. Do you really want to compete? Whoever's a coward is a coward. How much cash do you have? No matter how much you have, I can take out more cash than you. Chen Zhao was unprecedentedly confident in this aspect. Do you know how many listed companies I control? I don't know how many you control, but I'm sure that the total amount of money in your company's accounts isn't as much as mine. I can raise at least $3 billion. Then you lose. The viewers in the live stream were unhappy. These two guys were better at bragging than the other. But they didn't fight for real. Even though the numbers they mentioned were astronomical figures. But the key was that they were only moving their mouths. No one had seen that money before. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.